My husband donated my inheritance to his ex-girlfriend's charity gala before I even knew the pledge existed. He stood under a chandelier in front of 200 people, smiled like a saint, and announced that my grandfather's money would fund Celeste Vale's dream. Then he looked down at me from the stage and waited for me to clap. I did not clap. I reached into my evening bag, took off my wedding ring, and pressed it into the side pocket beside my phone. On the screen, I had already opened the donor authorization Grant had sent to the gala committee. My name sat at the bottom in a clean electronic signature, Evelyn Hart Mercer. Only I had never signed it. Grant's mother leaned close enough for her diamonds to brush my shoulder. Smile, Diane whispered. Do not embarrass this family. Across the ballroom, Celeste lifted her champagne flute toward me. Her smile was soft, grateful, practiced, the kind of smile that made strangers believe she rescued children and wounded birds before breakfast. Grant raised his glass higher. To Bright Harbor Foundation, he said, and to the woman who reminded me what generosity looks like. People applauded. I saved the document, I saved the video. I sent both to my trust lawyer with one sentence: freeze every pending transfer now. Then I looked back up at my husband, smiled for the first time that night, and waited for the money he stole to disappear from beneath his feet. The ballroom went silent for half a second after Grant said the amount. $3.2 million, then the applause rose like a wave. It filled the Grand Marlowe Hotel ballroom, bounced off the gold ceiling, and rolled over the round tables dressed in ivory linen and crystal centerpieces. People turned to look at me with admiration, surprise, envy, and that special kind of curiosity reserved for wealthy wives who were expected to be generous without being loud. I kept my hands folded in my lap. My nails were pale pink. My grandmother's bracelet sat on my wrist. My black silk dress felt suddenly too tight at the ribs. Though I had been breathing normally 10 minutes earlier on stage, my husband stood beside Celeste Vale. Grant wore a midnight tuxedo and the smile he used when cameras were present, confident, warm, slightly humble. He knew how to look like a man giving something away. He knew how to make sacrifice look effortless when the sacrifice belonged to someone else. Celeste stood half a step behind him in a silver gown that caught every light in the room. Her hand rested near his elbow, not touching, but close enough to suggest history. She was beautiful in the soft focus way of charity brochures, blonde hair pinned low, pearl earrings, a face trained to look moved by suffering without being touched by it. Evelyn and I have always believed, Grant continued, that privilege means responsibility. The word Evelyn passed through his mouth like a prop at my table. Diane Mercer touched my knee under the linen, her fingers squeezed once. A warning. I did not move. Grant looked directly at me. My wife's family has a long tradition of supporting the arts. Tonight, the Mercer family is honored to continue that tradition with a $3.2 million pledge to Bright Harbor Foundation's Children's Art Therapy Initiative. The applause swelled again. A woman across the table pressed a hand to her chest and mouthed, "How wonderful." I smiled at her because my body still knew how to perform manners while my mind sharpened around one. Clean fact: Grant had just announced my grandfather's inheritance as if it were his wedding gift to another woman. I picked up my phone under the table, the screen lit against my palm. I had ignored 3 messages from Lydia, my closest friend, because I had been trying to survive the evening without drama. Now her latest message sat at the top. "Did you approve this pledge? It is on the donor program. Call me." I opened the attached photo. There it was on heavy cream paper, embossed with the Bright Harbor Foundation logo. Lead legacy gift: the Mercer family and Evelyn Hart Mercer, $3,200,000. Below it, in smaller text, the pledge was described as a gift from Hart Family Trust Assets to launch the Celeste Vale Children's Arts Recovery Wing. My mouth went dry. The Hart Family Trust was not a marital account. It was not a Mercer account. It was not a pool of money Grant could dip into when his ambition needed champagne and applause. My grandfather, Arthur Hart, had built that trust after 40 years restoring damaged paintings and funding small museums that rich donors ignored. He had left it to me with instructions so specific his lawyer had once joked that grandfather had trusted oil paint more than husbands. Any charitable gift above $10,000 required my written approval. Any gift above $100,000 required my wet signature and trustee confirmation. $3.2 million required a board review, a signed statement of intent, and my personal meeting with the trustees. I had attended no meeting, I had signed nothing. Unstage, Celeste pressed her fingertips to her lips, her eyes shone. Grant turned toward her. Celeste's work has reminded all of us that healing is not abstract, it is color, it is music. It is a child picking up a paintbrush after trauma and realizing the world can still be beautiful. People murmured warmly, cameras flashed. Celeste touched his arm then. Not much, not enough for anyone else to call it intimate, enough for me, thank you. Grant, she said into the microphone, her voice trembling in a way that felt rehearsed, and thank you, Evelyn. I know a gift of this size requires a generous heart. Her gaze found mine for 1 second. The softness dropped, there was triumph underneath. Diane leaned close. Stand up, she whispered. They will expect you to stand. I turned my face toward her. Did you know? Her eyes flicked away. That was answer enough. Evelyn, she hissed. This is not the moment. That sentence had built my marriage. This is not the moment. Not the moment to object when Grant moved my consulting work around his schedule. Not the moment to argue when Diane planned dinners at our house and told me which wine I would serve. Not the moment to ask why Celeste had started appearing at every Mercer event 6 months after her divorce. Not the moment to notice that Grant laughed more easily beside her than he did beside me. Not the moment. The room stood. Diane stood first, then everyone at our table. Chairs scraped, napkins slid, applause became a standing ovation. I remained seated. Grant's smile tightened. Celeste saw it. She saw me still sitting. A tiny crease appeared between her brows before she smoothed it away. My phone buzzed. A forwarded email from Lydia appeared. Subject, donor authorization packet. I opened it with my thumb. My pulse was steady now, too steady. The kind of calm that sometimes arrives when fear has burned itself into something colder. The packet contained a pledge letter, a donor biography, bank routing instructions, and an authorization form. At the bottom of the form sat my electronic signature, Evelyn Hart Mercer. It looked like mine if someone had copied it from a holiday card and cleaned it with software. The H was too high. The final R in Mercer lacked the small curve I always made. No one else would notice. I noticed. My grandfather would have noticed. I downloaded the file. I saved it to 3 folders. I forwarded it to Margaret Wren, my trust attorney, with the video I had quietly recorded since Grant began his speech. Then I typed 1 sentence, freeze every pending transfer now. I hit send. Only then did I stand. The applause changed shape. It had been warm before, now it was relieved. People wanted the wife to join the story so the story could stay beautiful. Grant extended a hand toward me from the stage. Evelyn, he expected me to walk up there. He expected me to take the microphone. He expected me to kiss his cheek, accept Celeste's gratitude, and let the theft become generosity through my silence. I lifted my champagne flute instead. The room laughed softly, mistaking it for charm. I did not drink. I turned my wrist just enough for my phone camera to keep recording. Then I sat back down. Grant's jaw shifted. Celeste recovered first. We are so grateful, she said brightly. Please enjoy the rest of the evening. There is a beautiful auction coming up, and every bid tonight brings a child closer to healing. The orchestra began again. Servers moved between tables with practiced speed. Conversation returned, glittering and shallow. Diane sat beside me with the fury of a woman who considered embarrassment a personal injury. What is wrong with you? She whispered. I looked at the stage, where Grant was helping Celeste step down as if the stairs were dangerous and she were fragile glass. Apparently, I said, I am generous. Diane's lips thinned. Do not be clever with me. Then do not insult me with bad theft. Her face changed. Not enough for anyone else to notice, enough for me. You should be proud, she said. A gift like this puts your name on something meaningful. My name was already on it. That was the problem. Diane glanced around. Lower your voice. My voice is low. You know what I mean. Yes, I knew what everyone meant when they told me to lower my voice. They meant lower your standards. Lower your boundaries. Lower your self-respect until it fits under the table where family secrets belong. Grant reached our table before dessert. He did not sit. He placed one hand on the back of my chair and bent down as if kissing my temple. To anyone watching, It looked affectionate. His mouth stopped near my ear. "You embarrassed me," he said. I smiled at the guests across from us. "You forged my signature." His hand tightened on the chair. "You do not want to do this here." "I agree. You should not have done it here." He pulled back and looked at me. His eyes were not warm now. They were bright with disbelief, as if the furniture had started speaking. Celeste approached behind him, carrying 2 glasses of champagne. "I hope everything is all right." I looked at the glass she offered me and did not take it. "I was just congratulating my husband on his confidence," I said. Celeste's smile faltered. "Confidence? To announce a donation before confirming the donor." Grant gave a low laugh. "Evelyn is joking. She gets nervous at public events." There it was, the first bandage over the wound he had made. Celeste tilted her head. "Of course, big nights are emotional." I met her eyes. "Was it emotional when you received the donor packet?" Grant's hand dropped from my chair. Celeste blinked once. "I leave paperwork to my team." "That sounds convenient." Her lips parted. Grant stepped in. "Enough," he said quietly. The word landed with the weight of all the other quiet commands he had used over 6 years. "Enough questions, enough suspicion, enough attitude, enough of your grief over your grandfather, enough of making separate finances sound like distrust." I stood. "You are right." Grant exhaled as if he had one. "I have had enough." I took my evening bag from the chair and walked toward the hallway that led to the hotel's private reception rooms. I did not rush. Running would have made me look wounded. I was wounded, but I was not helpless. Behind me, Diane called my name under her breath. Grant did not call. Not yet. He still thought this was a mood. He still thought moods could be managed later with a closed door, a lowered voice, and his hand on my shoulder. In the hallway, the noise of the ballroom softened. Gold carpet swallowed my footsteps. A hotel staff member smiled at me. "Mrs. Mercer, can I help you?" "Yes," I said. "I need a quiet room and the name of your event security lead." His smile became uncertain. "Is there a problem?" I looked back at the ballroom doors. "There is about to be." Before he could answer, my phone buzzed. Margaret Wren's reply appeared on the screen. "Do not sign anything. Do not verbally confirm anything. Trustee has been notified. No transfer will be released." A second message arrived 2 seconds later. "Evelyn, this authorization is not legally valid. It was not signed by you." I stood under a wall sconce in the gold hallway and let the words settle into me. Not legally valid. Not signed by you. Behind the ballroom doors, people were still applauding a gift my husband had never owned. I looked down at my left hand. The pale band of skin beneath my missing ring seemed brighter than the diamonds in the room. Then the ballroom doors opened. Grant stepped out, smile gone. "What did you do?" he asked. I locked my phone and slipped it into my bag. The first honest thing anyone has done tonight. Grant did not shout in the hallway. That was not his style. He walked toward me with measured steps, one hand tucked into his trouser pocket, the other loose at his side. To anyone passing, he looked like a husband checking on his wife. Concerned, controlled, maybe a little tired. I knew the difference between calm and control. Grant had control. "Come with me," he said. "No." His eyebrows lifted. "Not high. Just enough." "Evelyn." He said my name like a warning wrapped in velvet. The hotel staff member who had offered help lingered near the service door, pretending to inspect a floral arrangement. I looked at him. "Could you please stay nearby?" I asked. Grant's face hardened. "That is unnecessary." "I disagree." The staff member straightened. "Of course, Grant lowered his voice. "You are making a scene." The scene was the speech. "I made a pledge. You pledged money that does not belong to you." His eyes moved toward the ballroom doors. 2 guests passed us, laughing, unaware that the beautiful charity evening had cracked open just outside the room. Grant waited until they were gone. "It is your foundation money," he said. "My trust. Our family name is attached to it. My grandfather's name is attached to it." His jaw tightened. Arthur would have wanted this. That was the first time that night I almost lost my composure. My grandfather had disliked Grant politely. He had never said so in a dramatic way. He had simply asked good questions at dinner and listened to the answers until Grant ran out of charm. After Grant left the room, Grandfather had looked at me over his reading glasses and said, "A man who talks too often about legacy usually wants to spend someone else's." At the time, I had laughed. I was not laughing now. Do not use my grandfather to justify Celeste. I said. Grant's mouth flattened. This is what it is really about. What, Celeste? The name hung between us, polished and poisonous. You are jealous, he said. You saw me support an old friend and turned it into a betrayal. I stared at him. He sounded almost relieved. Jealousy was easier than fraud. Jealousy made me emotional, small, unreasonable. Jealousy made him the patient husband. You forged my signature, I said. I authorized a charitable pledge on behalf of our household. Say that again with the security guard closer. His eyes flicked past me. The staff member had been joined by a man in a dark suit with an earpiece. Grant smiled at him. Everything about my husband could change in half a breath. His posture softened. His voice warmed. My wife is upset, he said. It has been an emotional evening. The security lead looked at me. Not him. Good man, Mrs. Mercer, he asked. I am not in danger, I said. But I do not want to be alone with him. Grant's face went still. There it was. The first public fracture. Not enough to ruin him, enough to insult him. Fine, he said. Then we will discuss this at home. No, you will go back inside. You will tell Celeste and the Gala committee that the pledge is under review and no transfer is confirmed. His laugh was sharp. Absolutely not. Then I will. He stepped closer. You will not walk into that ballroom and humiliate me because you are having a reaction to theft, to your own insecurity. I felt something inside me go quiet. There were insults that hurt because they were true. There were insults that hurt because you had once feared they might be true. And then there were insults that missed you completely because the person throwing them had not noticed you had moved. I opened my bag, took out my phone, and held it up. Do you want to keep going? Grant looked at the screen. The recording timer glowed red. He stared at it for a second too long, then he smiled. Recording your husband now? He asked. That is where we are. That is where you brought us. His gaze dropped to my bare ring finger. Something flickered across his face. Not regret, not fear yet, irritation, possession disturbed. Put your ring back on, he said. No, Evelyn, do not be childish. I took it off before I texted Margaret. That did it. His eyes sharpened. Margaret, my trust attorney. What exactly did you tell her? The truth. His nostrils flared once. He turned away, then back. When he spoke again, his voice had softened into the private tone he used when he wanted me to feel unreasonable for noticing damage. Evie, he said. I hated that he used the old name then. I hated that some tired part of me still recognized it. We can fix this, he said. I should have talked to you first. Yes, but I knew you would overthink it. No, you have been tense around Celeste for months, because my husband keeps placing her in rooms where my money is being discussed. He rubbed his forehead. Listen to yourself. I am, Bright Harbor needs this funding. The children need it. This is not about Celeste and me. Then why did she receive the donor packet before I did? His hand fell. I waited. Grant's silence answered for him. The ballroom doors opened again. Diane came out, wrapped in emerald silk and fury. What are you two doing? She whispered. People are asking why Evelyn left. Grant turned. Mother, go back inside. I will not. Evelyn, fix your face and come back to the table. I almost smiled. My face is not the problem. Diane looked at my hand, her expression chilled. Oh, for heaven's sake, Grant said. She contacted Margaret. Diane's eyes widened before she controlled them. Another answer. You knew, I said. Diane drew herself up. I knew my son was trying to do something meaningful with resources sitting idle. Your grandfather left more money than any one woman needs. The security lead's expression changed slightly. He looked down, pretending not to hear. I stepped closer to Diane, not because I wanted to intimidate her, but because I wanted every word to land. My grandfather left me protected money because he knew people would call it idle when they wanted it. Diane's cheeks colored. You ungrateful little girl. I am 34. You married into this family. I did not donate my legal identity to it. Grant grabbed Diane's elbow. Stop. She shook him off. No, she needs to understand. This family has carried her for 6 years. We gave her a name. That one almost made me laugh. Heart opened doors for Mercer before you learned which fork to use, I said. Diane flinched as if I had slapped her. Grant's eyes flashed. Enough. I turned to him. There is that word again. Diane leaned in. If you ruin tonight, you will not come back from it. I looked at her diamonds. at the emerald silk, at the woman who had introduced me as Grant's quiet wife to donors who had been invited through my grandfather's museum contacts. I am counting on that, I said. Grant exhaled through his nose. We are leaving. You can leave. I am staying long enough to speak to the hotel. The hotel? Diane asked. The pledge is listed in tonight's program. If the Gala committee accepts bids or incurs expenses based on an unauthorized gift, they need notice. Grant stepped between me and the hallway. No. The security lead moved then. Not much, just enough, sir, he said. Please give her space. Grant stared at him. I saw the calculation. Rich men did not like being corrected by staff, but smarter rich men did not make witnesses. He stepped back. Fine, he said, have your tantrum. But when you are done, you are coming home. I slipped my phone into my bag. No, I said, I am going to the house. His expression eased. He thought he had won something. To get my documents, I added. The ease vanished. Diane made a small sound. Documents. I looked at Grant. The prenup, the trust binder, my grandfather's will, everything you hoped I had forgotten. Grant's voice dropped. You do not want to turn a misunderstanding into a war. It stopped being a misunderstanding when you copied my signature. For the first time, fear touched his face. It was small, barely there, but I saw it. I left them in the hallway with the security lead between us and walked toward the hotel exit. My heels clicked against the marble lobby floor. Behind me, the ballroom kept glowing, music rising, donors laughing, Celeste smiling for photographs beside a pledge that had already begun to die outside. The night air hit my skin. I asked the valet for my car. Grant and I had arrived together, but the car was mine, another little detail everyone forgot until it mattered. While I waited, I opened my banking app. For 6 years, I had allowed several automatic transfers because it seemed easier than arguing, a monthly payment into the household account, a quarterly contribution toward Diane's family obligations, an emergency credit line Grant could access for home expenses, not trust principal. Never that, but enough to make life smooth for people who mistook smoothness for obedience. I cancelled the household transfer first, then Diane's, then Grant's emergency access. Each confirmation screen felt like a breath. The valet brought the car around. I tipped him with cash from my own wallet and drove home alone. The Mercer house sat behind black iron gates in a neighborhood where every lawn looked professionally calm. Grant had chosen it 3 years into our marriage because it photographed well. I had paid the down payment from a separate account because he had said liquidity was tight during a development cycle. The deed listed both names because I had trusted him then. Trust had a terrible resale value. Inside, the house smelled like white lilies and cedar polish. The housekeeper had left lights on in the front hall. A silver-framed wedding photograph sat on the console table. Grant smiling, me looking younger than 30, softer than I remembered, my grandfather alive beside me with his hand on my shoulder. I turned the frame face down, then I went upstairs to the study Grant called ours but used as his second office. Behind the lower shelf of art books sat the small fireproof safe my grandfather had insisted I keep. The keypad beeped under my fingers. Inside were 3 binders, a sealed envelope, 2 hard drives, and my grandfather's watch. I touched the watch first. I should have listened faster. I whispered, then I took out the trust binder, Arthur Hart Revocable Trust, restated, the prenup, the will, a folder labeled Personal Asset Inventory, a copy of the house deed. At the back of the safe sat a smaller folder I had not opened in years. My grandfather's handwriting marked the tab. For when someone calls you selfish. I opened it on the floor. Inside was a letter. Evelyn, people who love you will not need your poverty as proof of your goodness. People who respect you will not spend your inheritance to test your loyalty. Give when your heart is clear. Refuse when your stomach tightens. Money is not morality, it is memory, labor, and time made visible. Do not let a charming man turn my life's work into his applause. Grandfather. I sat there for 1 minute with the letter in my lap. Then my phone rang. Grant. I let it ring. He called again, then Diane, then Grant, then an unknown number. I answered the unknown number. Mrs. Mercer, a woman said. This is Nora Pike, finance director for Bright Harbor Foundation. I stood. Yes, I am sorry to call so late. Her voice trembled. What can I do for you, Ms. Pike? She swallowed audibly. I need to know if the Heart Trust transfer is still scheduled for tomorrow morning. I looked down at the letter in my hand. No, I said, it is not. Silence, then a breath. Oh God, she whispered. What did Celeste do? Nora did not answer right away. When she did, her voice had dropped to a whisper. She already spent against it. Nora hung up before I could ask a second question. I called back. It went straight to voicemail. For a moment, I stood in the study with my grandfather's letter in one hand and the phone in the other, listening to the quiet house breathe around me. Outside the windows, the lawn lights made the garden look staged, unreal. Inside, every surface reflected a marriage that had been curated for visitors, a wedding photo, a donor plaque, a signed bottle of wine from one of Grant's investors, a framed magazine profile calling him the new face of ethical development. I almost laughed at that one. Ethical. I packed the documents into a leather tote, not the designer one Diane had given me for Christmas, the one she always reminded people she had chosen because I needed something with structure. I used the old brown tote my grandfather had carried to estate sales and restoration sites. The leather was cracked at the handles. It looked like work. As I zipped it, the front door opened downstairs. Grant was home. Evelyn. His voice traveled up the staircase. I put grandfather's letter into the inner pocket of the tote and walked to the landing. Grant stood in the foyer below, tuxedo jacket open, bow tie undone. He looked up at me like a man arriving home to find his property rearranging itself. What did Nora say to you? I asked. His expression changed too quickly. What? Nora Pike, Bright Harbor's finance director. She called me. Grant set his keys on the console table with deliberate care. I have no idea why she would do that. She asked if the transfer was still scheduled. His eyes moved to the tote. What is in the bag? My documents. Our documents. No. He climbed 3 stairs. I did not move. Come down, he said. We need to talk like adults. Adults do not forge signatures. He stopped. I did not forge anything. Then who did? It was an electronic authorization prepared by the foundation. You gave me general permission to handle charitable matters. No, Grant, I let you RSVP to museum dinners. His face tightened. Do you hear how petty you sound? There it is again. What? The attempt to make theft sound like my personality flaw. He reached the landing. His voice softened. I made a mistake. Good. We have reached the word mistake. Next we can try fraud. His eyes flashed. Do not use legal language you do not understand. I almost admired the nerve of him. I was raised by a man who made me read trust documents before he let me sign birthday cards. Your grandfather was paranoid. My grandfather was correct. Grant looked away, then back. Fine. You want the truth. I thought you would approve it. I knew you might resist because you get strange about money when it comes from Arthur. But I thought once you saw the impact, you would understand. You announced it before asking me. I announced it because timing matters. The gala needed momentum. Celeste needed a cornerstone pledge to secure matching donors. Celeste needed. His mouth pressed shut. I came down one stair. Not the children. Not the foundation. Celeste. He looked tired suddenly, and that tiredness angered me more than shouting would have. He wanted exhaustion to stand in for remorse. She has worked for this for years, he said. You have no idea how hard it has been for her. I gripped the banister. Do you know how hard it was for my grandfather to build that trust? Grant closed his eyes. This is not a competition. No. Because if it were, the woman who stole nothing would win. He opened his eyes. You are going to destroy a charity because you hate my friend. I am going to stop my inheritance from being stolen. It is $3.2 million from a trust worth more than that. My voice went quiet. Say that again. He frowned. Say it exactly like that again. His gaze dropped to my bag. I smiled without warmth. You do understand value. You just do not respect ownership. The doorbell rang. Grant looked over his shoulder. I moved past him and went downstairs. Do not open that, he said. I opened it. Margaret Wren stood on the porch in a charcoal coat, her silver hair twisted low at the nape of her neck. She was 61, sharp-eyed, and allergic to nonsense. Beside her stood James Whitaker, the Heart Trust's senior trustee, holding a document case. Grant's face paled by one shade. Margaret looked at him, then at me. Are you safe? Yes. Do you want us to come in? Yes. Grant gave a strained laugh. This is absurd. You called your lawyer to our home at midnight. I called her before dessert. Margaret stepped inside without waiting for Grant's invitation. James followed and nodded to me with the grave courtesy he had used since I was 19. Mr. Mercer. Margaret said. Margaret, Grant tried for charm, it landed badly. This is a marital misunderstanding. I have seen the authorization. His face stilled. Margaret removed a folder from her case. It is not valid. Grant's smile thinned. That is your opinion. No, it is the trust instrument's requirement. Gifts above $100,000 require Evelyn's wet signature, trustee approval, and recorded donor intent. You submitted an electronic authorization with no trustee certification. You also represented to Bright Harbor Foundation that funds would transfer from Hart Family Trust accounts tomorrow morning. James spoke then. No such transfer was approved. Grant looked at him. James, we discussed philanthropic flexibility at the spring reception. We discussed general interest in arts programming, James said. We did not discuss $3.2 million to Bright Harbor Foundation. Margaret placed a page on the console table. This is a notice to all relevant financial institutions freezing any attempted transfer connected to the pledge. Grant stared at the paper. The house seemed to settle around us. What have you done? He asked me. I looked at Margaret. Nora Pike says Bright Harbor already spent against the pledge. Margaret's eyes sharpened. What exactly did she say? That Celeste already spent against it. Grant's face changed. Not surprise. Damage control. Margaret caught it too. Mr. Mercer, did you or Ms. Vale represent the pledge as guaranteed funds? Grant said nothing. James sighed quietly. I had known James long enough to understand that sigh. It was not shock. It was disappointment from a man who had expected better paperwork from bad behavior. Margaret turned to me. We need bank records, communications, and any donor materials from tonight. We also need to send formal revocation notices before business opens. I have the program, the donor packet, and a recording of Grant's speech. Grant stepped toward me. You recorded my speech. It was public. You recorded me in the hallway. That was not public. That was protective. His voice sharpened. Protective from what? I looked at Margaret. She looked at Grant. From this conversation, apparently. Grant laughed once. Unbelievable. No, I said. Predictable. His head turned toward me slowly. I had never spoken to him like that in front of others, not because I had nothing to say, but because I had once believed dignity meant privacy. I had protected our marriage in rooms where he had spent it. Grant stepped closer. You are being manipulated. Margaret's eyebrows rose. By whom? I asked. By people who have always disliked me. He said, Arthur poisoned you against my family before he died. The air left my lungs for a heartbeat. I was back in my grandfather's kitchen, watching him hold a chipped mug, listening to him ask whether Grant made me feel larger or smaller. I had defended Grant then. I had said he challenged me. Grandfather had not argued. He had only kissed my forehead and said, then keep a part of yourself where no one can reach it. That part was standing in my foyer now. Do not say his name again tonight, I said. Grant's eyes flickered. Margaret moved slightly. Enough to remind him she was present. James opened his document case. Evelyn, we can meet at the trust office at 8. There is a lot to review. No, I said. We review now. Grant frowned. You cannot be serious. I turned to him. Go to bed, Grant. This is my house. For now, it is half yours. Do not make me regret that generosity tonight too. His face went red. Diane would have called that vulgar. Celeste would have called it aggression. Grant would call it instability later. I was sure, but Margaret smiled faintly. We moved into the dining room because the table was long enough for documents. Grant followed, refusing to leave his own humiliation unattended. Margaret laid out the trust terms. James opened banking records. I forwarded every file. From Lydia and my phone, we built a timeline in clean blocks 6 weeks earlier. Celeste had emailed Grant a proposal for a new wing. Not a small program, a named wing for weeks earlier. Grant had asked James informally about the speed of donor approvals, 3 weeks earlier. Celeste's Gala team had printed programs listing the Mercer family and Evelyn Hart Mercer as lead donors 2 weeks earlier. Someone had uploaded an electronic authorization form using an IP address tied to Grant's office network 5 days earlier. Bright Harbor had signed expanded contracts with the hotel, the production company, and a celebrity auction host tonight. Grant had announced the pledge tomorrow morning. They expected money. Margaret tapped the authorization form with one manicured finger. The signature is copied from somewhere. I knew before she asked. Our holiday cards, I said. Grant looked away. Margaret looked at him. Is that where it came from? He said nothing. James removed his glasses and cleaned them slowly. Grant. The use of his first name seemed to bother Grant more than any accusation. I did not personally copy her signature, Grant said. My laugh came out before I could stop it. Who did? Celeste's in turn. His silence thickened. Margaret wrote something down. Grant pointed at her. Do not twist my words. I do not need to twist anything, she said. They are quite cooperative on their own. My phone buzzed. A message from Lydia, the Gala photographer, just posted a caption. Calling Celeste and Grant, the heart behind the heart gift. Screenshot saved. I handed the phone to Margaret. She read it and passed it to James. Grant saw their faces. Social captions can be corrected. Can fraud? I asked. He slammed his palm on the table. The sound cracked through the room. I did not flinch. That seemed to frighten him more than if I had. Enough, he said. I looked at his hand on the polished walnut table I had chosen. In the dining room I had decorated, under the chandelier my money had installed. No, I said, for the first time in this house. It is not enough. Margaret closed her folder. Mr. Mercer, the trust will issue formal revocation at 7 a.m. We will also notify Bright Harbor Foundation that no funds are authorized. If they have incurred obligations based on your representations, they may have claims against you. Grant stared at her. What claims? Fraudulent misrepresentation. At minimum. His mouth opened. No words came out. There it was. The first real cost, not a hurt feeling, not a marital argument, a claim, a file, a consequence with letterhead. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Celeste. I almost ignored it. Then I saw the message preview. You made your point. Do not punish children. Because Grant finally found the courage to stand beside a woman who does something useful. I read it twice, then I showed Margaret. Her face remained still, but her eyes cooled. Save that, she said. I already had. Grant reached for my phone. I pulled it back. Do not, I said. His hand froze midair. For 6 years, Grant had reached for things and expected the world to give way. My hand, my time, my grandfather's contacts, my money, my silence. This time, the world did not move. By noon the next day, the donation was dead, not delayed, not under discussion, dead. Margaret sent the revocation notice to Bright Harbor Foundation, the Grand Marlowe Hotel, the payment processor, Grant's office, and every trustee attached to the Hart Family Trust. James added a trustee statement in language so dry it could have absorbed blood from a crime scene. No Hart Family Trust funds had been approved, scheduled, pledged, released, reserved, or otherwise committed to Bright Harbor Foundation. No individual other than Evelyn Hart had authority to approve such a pledge. Any representation to the contrary was unauthorized. I read the notice 3 times in Margaret's office while morning light spread across the glass conference table. It was not emotional language. It did not call Grant a thief. It did not call Celeste a liar. It did not mention my marriage at all. It was perfect. The first consequence arrived at 12:17 p.m. Grant called. I let it go to voicemail at 12:19. Diane called at 12:21. Grant texted, call me before you make this worse, at 12:25. Celeste posted a photo from the gala. She stood beside Grant, one hand on a child's painting, her face tilted toward the light. Some gifts are about more than money. They are about courage, compassion, and choosing hope even when others choose fear. She did not name me. She did not need to. By 1:00 p.m., Lydia sent screenshots of comments. Why would someone revoke money from a children's charity? Sounds like family drama. Sad. Wealthy people are so gross. Celeste is class. The wife should be ashamed. I put the phone down. Margaret watched me from across the table. Do you want to respond publicly? Not yet. Good. Is that legal advice or personal satisfaction? Both. James cleared his throat. There is another issue. He slid a bank summary toward me. Grant had not accessed the Hart Trust principal. He could not. But for years, I had allowed household transfers to cover expenses he framed as shared, renovations, event hosting, Diane's charity committee dues. Mercer family travel, a private chef for investor dinners. Security upgrades Grant said were necessary because of my family assets. The total sat at the bottom of the page, $876,000 over 6 years. Not theft in the clean legal sense. Not all of it. I had approved many transfers. I had been there. I had nodded. I had said yes because the amount seemed smaller than the argument. The number made the room tilt. Margaret's voice gentled. Evelyn, I knew some of it. I said. Knew is not the same as understood. I stared at the figure, $876,000 of comfort, smooth dinners, Diane's floral arrangements, Grant's investor image, a house that photographed well, a marriage that looked expensive enough to be stable. What do? I asked. Margaret did not soften the answer. You cut off everything that is not legally required. So I did. We started with automatic transfers, already cancelled, but now formally documented, then household vendor accounts, florist, wine merchant, private chef, event planner, car service attached to my card, Diane's quarterly family office reimbursement, then digital access. Grant had shared logins to my cloud storage, my archive subscriptions, my museum donor portals, my private calendar, and my household expense dashboard. I revoked every permission, then the house, because the deed was joint. I could not simply lock him out, but I could stop paying for the illusion that it belonged to his family alone. I emailed the property manager, effective immediately. No expenses over $500 may be charged to my personal accounts without my written approval. Margaret watched me type. Good. James looked relieved in the way older men look when they have been waiting years for a young woman to stop calling surrender. Kindness at 3. Grant appeared at Margaret's office. He had not made an appointment. He charmed the receptionist. When that failed, he waited in the lobby until I came out for coffee. He stood from the leather chair like he had rehearsed the movement. Evelyn. I stopped beside the reception desk. He held a white bakery box. For one absurd second, I thought of our 3rd anniversary. He had brought me lemon tarts from the small bakery near my old apartment because I had once mentioned them after 2 glasses of wine. I had cried then, moved by the proof that he listened. Now he held the same bakery box like a key to a door I had closed. Can we talk? He asked. Margaret's receptionist looked between us with professional blankness. No, I said, his smile strained. 5 minutes. You can speak to my attorney. I am your husband. That is under review too. Pain crossed his face. For the first time, I saw something that looked almost real. It did not move me the way it once would have. I could not tell whether he missed me or missed access to me. Please, he said quietly, not here. Public embarrassment. His true religion. I looked at the bakery box. Did Celeste tell you to bring those? His jaw tightened. That is unfair. Did you think of them yourself? He looked away. I almost laughed. Grant, she said you liked them. He admitted. The humiliation of that was so clean it felt surgical. My husband had brought me apology pastries recommended by the woman he had stolen my money to impress. No, I said. His brows drew together. No what? No to the pastries. No to 5 minutes. No to whatever document you have hidden under the napkins. His eyes flicked down. There it was. I reached for the box. He hesitated. I took it before he could stop me and opened the lid on the reception counter. Lemon tarts sat in perfect rows. Under them lay a folded envelope. I removed it. Grant's face went pale with anger. What is this? I asked. He lowered his voice. A way to fix the mess you created. I unfolded the paper. Donation confirmation and marital property understanding. I read the first paragraph. It stated that I, Evelyn Hart Mercer, acknowledged and confirmed that the Bright Harbor Pledge had been discussed within the marriage, approved in spirit, and revoked only due to confusion caused by outside advisors. The second paragraph stated that I agreed to release Grant Mercer from any claims connected to the pledge. The third paragraph stated that I recognized charitable giving from heart-related assets as part of the Mercer family's joint philanthropic strategy. I looked up. Grant said, "It is not final. It is a starting point." A starting point for what? My lobotomy. The receptionist made a small choking sound and turned it into a cough. Grant's eyes hardened. You are enjoying this? No, I am documenting it. I held up the paper. Thank you for delivering evidence. He reached for it. Evelyn. I stepped back. Do not touch me. The lobby went still. Grant noticed the receptionist watching. His hand dropped. "You have lost perspective," he said. "I am trying to protect us." "No, you are trying to make me sign a confession that turns your fraud into my confusion." He leaned closer. "Do you know what happens if this becomes public?" "Yes." "No, you do not. People will not see a brave woman protecting her inheritance. They will see a rich wife destroying a children's charity because her husband admired another woman." There it was, the threat with its coat off. I folded the paper and slid it into my tote. "Then they will be wrong for a little while." His eyes narrowed. "You can live with that. I lived with you." The words landed harder than I expected. Grant stared at me for 1 second. The man I married looked through the man who had arrived with Celeste-approved pastries. He looked stunned, wounded, almost young. Then his pride returned. "You think Margaret can save you from the consequences of humiliating me?" I leaned in just enough that only he could hear. "I do not need saving from consequences. I am choosing them." I walked past him into Margaret's office. By 5, Diane had summoned me to family dinner. She did not ask. She texted the way she issued seating charts. "You will be at the house at 7. We will settle this privately." I considered ignoring it. Then Margaret said, "Go." I looked at her. "Take Lydia," she said. "Record where legal. Do not sign anything. Let them speak." So at 7, I went to Diane's house with Lydia beside me. Diane lived in a limestone mansion 10 minutes from ours, a place filled with antique mirrors and fresh flowers paid for through a family account I had just stopped feeding. The dining table was set for 12. Grant was there, so were his brother, his aunt, 2 cousins, and Celeste. Celeste sat to Diane's right. My chair was at the far end of the table, not beside my husband. Lydia looked at the seating arrangement and whispered, subtle as a hostage note. I almost smiled. Diane stood. "Evelyn, how kind of you to come." "I was invited." "You were expected." Celeste lowered her eyes. "Maybe I should go. This is family." "No," Diane said, touching her hand. "You are part of this conversation." I looked at Grant. He did not look ashamed. That answered another question. Dinner began with soup no one wanted. Diane waited until the server left before placing a pen beside my bowl. Then Grant set the same agreement on the table. Diane folded her hands. "You will sign tonight." Lydia went very still beside me. I picked up the pen. Grant exhaled. I used it to push the document back across the table. "No." The word traveled down the long table like a glass cracking. Diane's face froze. "Excuse me." "No." Grant leaned forward. "Evelyn, do not do this." Celeste spoke softly. "This is hurting children." I turned to her. "Then open your books." Color rose in her cheeks. Diane snapped. "You are not interrogating guests in my home. She is not a guest in my marriage." Grant stood. "Enough." I looked up at him. "Every time you say that, I remember another reason I should have left earlier." His brother muttered, "Jesus." Diane's eyes shone with fury. "If you walk out of this family, do not expect to walk back in." I stood. "That is the first generous offer anyone has made me all week." Grant's chair scraped as he stood too. "If you leave, I will tell people exactly what kind of wife you are." I picked up my bag. "Good," I said. "Use your own signature this time." The article appeared the next morning. It was not in a major newspaper. Grant was too careful for that. It appeared first on a glossy local lifestyle site that covered charity events, wealthy divorces disguised as culture, and restaurants where no one paid their own bill. The headline read, "When Private Drama Threatens Public Good, Inside the Bright Harbor Funding Crisis." My name appeared in the second paragraph. Sources close to the Mercer family described me as emotionally volatile, isolated, and deeply uncomfortable with her husband's long-standing friendship with philanthropist Celeste Vale. Long-standing friendship, that phrase did a lot of work for 2 people who had once lived together for a semester in college, broken up dramatically, married other people, divorced other people, and found each other again right when Grant needed admiration and Celeste needed funding. The article said the Heart Trust pledge had been unexpectedly revoked after I became upset at the gala. It did not mention forged authorization. It did not mention missing trustee approval. It did not mention that I had never signed anything. It did mention children 7 times. Lydia read it aloud in my temporary apartment while I stood barefoot in the kitchen, making coffee so strong it looked like a legal strategy. "Do you want me to destroy them online?" she asked. No, not even a little, no. I can do elegant destruction, I know. She tossed the phone onto the counter. They are setting you up as the jealous rich wife. They already told me they would. Grant, and Diane, and Celeste with her. Wounded bird routine. Lydia's expression softened. Are you okay? I looked around the apartment. It belonged to a friend of Margaret's who rented it furnished to visiting professors. 1 bedroom, clean lines, no family portraits, no Grant's cuff links on the dresser, no Diane-approved floral arrangements, no charity plaques. I had slept 4 hours and woken with my jaw clenched. I am angry, I said. That feels more useful than okay. The doorbell rang. Lydia checked the peephole. Speak of the ethically challenged devil, she said. Grant stood in the hallway with flowers, not lemon tarts this time, white roses. I opened the door but kept the chain on. He looked at the chain, then at me. Really? Yes. His eyes moved over my shoulder to Lydia. Can we speak privately? No, Lydia said. I almost smiled. Grant ignored her. Evelyn, I came to apologize. I waited. He held up the flowers slightly. May I come in? No. Pain flashed in his eyes. I am trying. No, you are arriving. His hand dropped. I handled things badly. That is not an apology. I should have talked to you before the gala. Still not an apology. His face tightened. I am sorry I did not discuss the pledge with you before announcing it. There it was, a sentence built like a hallway with no doors. It admitted a scheduling issue, not a violation. You are sorry for the timing, I said. I am sorry you were hurt. I was not hit by weather. Grant, you hurt me. He looked down the hallway, then back. Can you not do this in front of Lydia? Lydia leaned against the wall. I am learning so much, I said. You forged my signature. Grant lowered his voice. I did not create that form, but you submitted it. He paused. Good. We were finding nouns. You allowed it to be submitted, I said. His jaw worked. Celeste's team prepared the packet, and you gave them my information. I gave them what they needed to process a gift we both should have supported. My stomach turned. Should have, I repeated. Yes, should have. That is what marriage is. Sometimes one person sees the larger picture being Celeste's name on a wing. His eyes flashed. You cannot see past her. You cannot see anyone else. He flinched for a second. Silence sat between us, heavy and old. Then he reached into his coat. Lydia straightened. Grant saw it and gave a bitter laugh. It is paper. He held up an envelope, a revised agreement. Before you react, it is different. No admission language, no release of all claims, just a confirmation that the pledge can go forward properly. You can sign with Margaret present. We can reduce the amount if that makes you feel better. If that makes me feel better, I am trying to compromise. You are trying to buy Celeste a smaller trophy with my dead grandfather's money. His face went cold. That is a cruel thing to say. No. A cruel thing to do was standing on stage beside your ex and thanking her for teaching you generosity while spending money that came from the man who raised me. He looked away. There, mark small, but real. He recovered fast. Bright Harbor has obligations now, vendors, programs, matching donors. If you do not approve some version of the gift, the foundation could be sued. By whom? He hesitated. Grant, vendors, partners, and you. His eyes lifted. Could Bright Harbor sue you? I asked. For representing funds you could not guarantee. His silence answered. I opened the door as far as the chain allowed and held out my hand. Give me the agreement. He did. I scanned the first page. It was cleaner than the dinner version. Margaret's warnings had reached him. But paragraph 4 stated that I would acknowledge prior verbal consent to the charitable intention. Paragraph 7 stated that neither party would pursue civil claims arising from documentation irregularities. Documentation irregularities, I laughed. Grant's eyes darkened. What? That is such a beautiful phrase for fraud. You keep using that word, because it fits. You want me destroyed? No. Grant, I want you described accurately. If that destroys you, the problem is not the description. His hand tightened around the flower stems. A thorn must have caught him because his thumb jerked. A bead of blood appeared near his nail. He looked at it with surprise for a ridiculous moment. I remembered cutting my finger on a broken wine glass our first year married. Grant had crossed the kitchen in 2 strides, taken my hand under the faucet, wrapped it carefully, and kissed my wrist. I had believed tenderness revealed truth. Sometimes tenderness was just another skill. Evelyn, he said, quieter now, I do not want to lose you. The sentence found an old bruise. I held the agreement in one hand and the door in the other. Then why did you risk me for applause? He did not answer. A phone buzzed in his pocket. He glanced down, the screen lit with Celeste's name. Lydia saw it. I saw it. Grant silenced the call. I smiled. You should get that. A useful woman might need you. His face twisted. Do not become ugly. There he was. The real apology had lasted less than 10 minutes. I pushed the agreement back through the gap. No, he did not take it. Keep it, he said. Have Margaret review it. She will frame it. I closed the door. The chain clicked against the frame. Grant stood outside for several seconds. I could hear his breathing through the wood. Then he said, if you force this into court, every private thing in our marriage becomes fair game. I looked at Lydia. Her mouth tightened. Grant continued, your moods, your grief after Arthur died, the medication you took for sleep, the way you stopped working full-time. Do not think I will stand there and let you paint me as some criminal while you play innocent. My hand went still on the lock. There it was. The threat under the apology, not just money, reputation, sanity, grief. The softest parts of me sharpened into weapons. I opened the recording app on my phone and placed it near the door. Say it again, I called. Silence. Then his footsteps retreated. Lydia whispered, tell me you got enough. I got enough. She hugged herself. He is worse than I thought. No, I said, he is exactly what I stopped excusing. At 10, Margaret arrived with 2 coffees and a face that said she had already read the article. Do not respond emotionally, she said as soon as I opened the door. I did not. Good. I recorded Grant threatening to use my grief and sleep medication against me. Margaret paused with 1 coffee halfway. Extended. Better. We spent the next 2 hours building a formal response. Not a social media rant, not a wounded wife statement, a narrow legal notice. The Hart Family Trust confirms that no authorized pledge was made to Bright Harbor Foundation. Any public representation suggesting otherwise is inaccurate. The trust is reviewing potential misuse of donor identity, unauthorized documentation, and related financial representations. Margaret sent it to the foundation board, the hotel, grants, legal counsel, and the lifestyle site at noon. The article updated by 1. Grant called 6 times at 2. Celeste posted again. Some women mistake control for dignity. Real generosity requires surrender. I stared at the sentence for a long time. Then I did something I had not done once since the gala. I replied, real charities open their books. I hit send for 3 minutes. Nothing happened. Then the comments began to change. Open them. Celeste, wait. Why will no one explain the authorization issue? Did Evelyn actually sign? Where is the money? Lydia whooped from the sofa. There she is. I did not feel triumphant. I felt the ground shift. At 4, Margaret called. Grant's office sent another packet. She said, what kind? Her voice was tight. Identity documents, copies of your driver's license, passport page, and trust beneficiary certification were sent to Bright Harbor's donor processing team. My blood cooled. I never sent those. I know. Who did? We are tracing it. But I already knew. Grant had always kept copies of household documents in his office. Passports for travel, IDs for insurance, beneficiary pages for estate planning discussions. I had given him access because we were married. He had given my identity to Celeste. I stood, walked to the window, and looked down at the street where normal people moved through normal afternoons, buying groceries, walking dogs, carrying coffee. What is the legal word? I asked. Margaret was quiet for a second. Misuse, she said. Possibly identity fraud. We need more facts. Facts. I could do facts. Send me everything, I said. When the files arrived, I opened them one by one. My passport, my license, a trust summary page, a donor profile with my biography edited to make Grant sound like the active philanthropist and me like his supportive spouse. At the bottom of the donor profile was a line I had never approved. Mrs. Mercer prefers to remain private but fully supports her husband's leadership in the family's charitable giving. I read it until the words blurred. Then I opened a hidden folder on my laptop. For years, I had saved things without knowing why. Receipts, emails, screenshots, Diane's texts, Grant's messages asking me to cover short-term expenses, Celeste's invitations addressed to Grant plus guest even after she knew I was his wife. A marriage could look clean from far away, up close. It was made of patterns. I created a new folder, Bright Harbor Fraud, then I dragged the first file inside. Nora Pike agreed to meet me at a coffee shop with no valet parking. That told me more about her fear than her words did. The place sat between a laundromat and a pharmacy on the east side of the city. Its tables were scratched wood, its mugs did not match. Nobody there cared who chaired a gala committee or whose name belonged on a hospital wing. I arrived early and chose the corner table with a clear view of both doors. I wore jeans, a grey sweater, and my grandfather's watch at 9:04. Nora walked in wearing a navy coat and the expression of a woman who had checked behind her too many times. She was younger than I expected, maybe 28, with dark curls pulled into a tight bun and a canvas tote clutched against her side. She saw me and almost turned around. I stood. Nora, she came over slowly. I cannot stay long. Then sit fast. A nervous laugh escaped her. She sat with her back to the wall. I ordered coffee for both of us. Her hands shook when she took the mug. Brown liquid spilled onto the saucer. I should not have called you, she said, but you did. I panicked. Because the transfer stopped. She looked down. Nora, I am not here to hurt you. I need to know what happened. Her fingers tightened around the mug. I work in finance. Worked, I might not after this. Did Celeste authorize spending based on the pledge? Nora closed her eyes when she opened them. Something in her had given up pretending. Yes, how much? At least 600,000 in immediate commitments. More if you count projected contracts. My breath caught despite myself. 4. Children's programming. Nora's mouth twisted. Some, not most. She reached into her tote and pulled out a folder. Then she stopped, clutching it. If I give this to you, I need protection. I can connect you with Margaret. Celeste will say I stole documents. Did you? I copied invoices that crossed my desk. That is different, not to people with lawyers. True, I leaned forward. Why are you helping me? Nora looked toward the window. A bus hissed to a stop outside. People got on and off, carrying ordinary burdens. My brother was in one of Bright Harbor's pilot programs, she said. After our house fire, he stopped talking for months. Painting helped. That is why I took the job. I believed in it. Her eyes reddened. But she did not cry. Celeste knew exactly how to talk about children like him. She was brilliant at it. Donors loved her. But this year, more money went to positioning than programs, consultants, media packages, wardrobe, the gala, a documentary team. She kept saying visibility brings funding. And Grant. Nora looked at me then. He made her feel untouchable. The words entered me quietly and stayed. What does that mean? He promised the heart gift would land before the gala invoices came due. He told her not to worry about the board. He said you were private. Not difficult. That you trusted him with these things. Private, not difficult. Another translation of silence. Nora slid the folder across the table. I opened it. Invoices. Payment schedules. Internal emails. A budget revision showing Hart Mercer legacy gift as guaranteed revenue. A contract with the Grand Marlowe for an expanded ballroom package. A celebrity host fee. A brand consultant retainer. A line item marked donor experience enhancement that cost more than the annual salary of 2 art therapists. My stomach tightened. Where is the children's wing? I asked. Nora swallowed. There is no wing yet. What? There is a proposal, some architectural renderings. No lease, no construction contract. The named wing was for donor materials. I looked down at the gala program invoice. Celeste had not needed my grandfather's money to heal children. She had needed it to print the future. Does Grant know this? I asked. Nora hesitated. Nora, I do not know everything he knows. But I saw emails. He knew the wing was not ready. He told Celeste that big gifts create reality. I laughed once. Softly, big gifts create reality. I imagined Grant saying it in his office, leaning back in his chair, hands open, voice warm with certainty. I imagined Celeste hearing not fraud, but romance. Nora took a folded page from her coat pocket. This one is why I called. It was an email chain. Celeste to Grant. If Evelyn hesitates, can you handle her? We cannot lose the Hart name now. Grant to Celeste. She will not make a public issue. She hates scenes. Once it is announced, She will adjust, Celeste. You know her better than I do, Grant. I know what she can live with. The coffee shop noise faded. I read the last sentence again. I know what she can live with. My husband had built his betrayal on his estimate of my tolerance. Not my love, not my consent, my tolerance. Nora watched my face. I am sorry. I folded the email and placed it back in the folder. Do not be sorry, be accurate. She nodded. We arranged for her to meet Margaret that afternoon. I paid for the coffee in cash, outside. Nora pulled her coat tight around her. There is one more thing, she said. I waited. Celeste is planning another event. The gala already happened, a donor recovery dinner, smaller, invite only. Grant is supposed to speak. They are calling it an emergency bridge campaign. When, next Friday, my laugh had no humor. A second gala for the money they already lost. Not exactly. They want to pressure you publicly. Celeste says if you are seen refusing again, the board will let her sue Grant and you together. But if you sign before then, everyone can call it a misunderstanding, of course. Another stage, another trap dressed as charity. Thank you, I said. Nora nodded and walked away quickly. I sat in my car with the folder on the passenger seat and called Margaret. We have invoices, I said, and emails. Come in. I also have a date for their next public mistake. Margaret was silent for half a second. Good. I drove to her office by side streets because I did not want to pass the Grand Marlow. Halfway there, I noticed the black SUV. At first, I thought I was imagining it. Stress turns ordinary cars into omens, but the SUV stayed 2 cars behind me through 3 turns, slowed when I slowed, and followed me into the parking garage beneath Margaret's building. I parked near the elevator and stayed in the car. The SUV stopped 20 spaces away. A man in a baseball cap lifted his phone. The flash was off, the camera was not. My hands went cold. I took a photo of him taking a photo of me. Then I called building security. When the guard approached, the SUV started and left too quickly. Margaret met me at the elevator. One of Grant's people, she asked after I showed her the picture, or Celeste's. Either way, useful. Inside the conference room, Nora's documents spread across the table like a map of rot. Margaret read the emails first. Her face did not change. That was how I knew they were bad. James arrived 20 minutes later. He read Grant's line aloud. I know what she can live with. He removed his glasses. I knew your grandfather, he said quietly. He would have disliked that sentence very much. My throat tightened. Yes. Margaret sorted the documents into piles: unauthorized pledge, misuse of identity, reliance, and vendor exposure, foundation spending, public defamation, marital coercion. A marriage reduced to legal categories looked cleaner than it had felt. Each wound had a label. Each label had a process. Process did not heal, but it gave my anger somewhere to stand. At 5, Grant texted, I know you met Nora. She is unstable and disgruntled. Do not let her drag you into something ugly. I stared at the message. Then another came also, stop involving outsiders in our marriage. A third, where are you staying? We need to talk. I sent all 3 to Margaret. Then I replied to Grant, all future communication through counsel. His answer came 30 seconds later. You are my wife, not a lawsuit. I typed, but did not send. You made me both. Instead, I blocked his number for 1 hour. Not forever. Not yet. Margaret needed messages. But for 1 hour, I wanted my own mind without his voice entering it. That evening, Lydia came over with takeout and a stack of storage boxes. What are those? For whatever you still have at the house, she said. Clothes, books, evidence, emotional support lamps. I cannot just empty the house. You can empty your life out of it. So we went. The Mercer house was dark when we arrived except for Grant's study light. My name still opened the gate. My key still turned the door. I walked in with Lydia behind me and 2 security guards Margaret had recommended waiting outside. Grant emerged from the study as we crossed the foyer. His shirt sleeves were rolled. He looked tired for a second. The domestic familiarity of him hurt. This man had once made coffee in our kitchen. He had once fallen asleep on the sofa with his head in my lap. He had once called me from airports just to say he had landed. Then he looked at the boxes in Lydia's hands. What are you doing? Taking my things. His face hardened. No, Lydia muttered. Not how belongings work. Grant ignored her. Evelyn, you are not moving out. I already did. You are angry. Fine. But you do not get to dismantle our home because of one disagreement, one forged donation, one smear article, one identity packet, and one photographer following me." His expression shifted. "There, you knew about the photographer," I said. "I wanted to know you were safe. You wanted to know where I was, because you are acting erratically." I laughed. "Grant, I am acting with lawyers. That is the opposite of erratic." He stepped closer. "You are letting Margaret poison this. You are letting Lydia cheer you into divorce." Lydia raised a hand. "For the record, I have been anti-Grant since the birthday toast of 2021. He glared at her. "This is not your marriage." "No," she said, "but I have eyes." I walked past him toward the stairs. He caught my wrist, not hard enough to bruise, hard enough to remind me he believed he could stop me. I looked down at his hand. "Let go." His grip loosened, but did not release. "Talk to me," he said. "Without lawyers, without her, just talk to me." I looked at his face. Maybe if he had said that before the gala, before the forged signature, before Celeste's post, before the documents, before the threat about my grief, maybe then my body would have softened toward the old habit of hope. But not now. "Grant," I said, "you no longer get private access to the woman you publicly humiliated." He let go. I went upstairs and packed, clothes first, work files, jewelry that came from my family, my grandfather's restoration tools from the display shelf Grant had always called charmingly dusty, a small landscape painting grandfather had repaired when I was a child, my grandmother's recipe box, my passport from the locked drawer Grant had somehow copied in the bedroom. I opened the nightstand. My wedding ring sat in the side pocket of my evening bag where I had left it. I looked at it for a long moment, then I dropped it into a small evidence envelope Margaret had given me for documents. Lydia watched from the doorway. "Are you okay?" "No," I said, "but I am accurate." Downstairs, Grant stood by the front door as the guards carried boxes out. "You are making the biggest mistake of your life," he said. I stopped in front of him. "No," I said, "I made that 6 years ago in white satin. This is the correction." He flinched. Behind him, his phone rang. Celeste's name lit the screen again. This time, I did not make a joke. I just walked out. Celeste chose the Calder Art Museum for her next move. Of course she did. The Calder was small, elegant, and closely tied to my grandfather's early restoration work. He had saved 3 of their 19th century portraits after a basement flood before the museum had enough money to pay him properly. For years, they had displayed a plaque near the West Gallery thanking Arthur Hart for preserving beauty from ruin. Celeste scheduled her emergency donor reception there and called it a night of courage. The invitation arrived in my inbox through a donor list she should not have had. Join Bright Harbor Foundation for an intimate evening honoring those who stand for children when funding becomes uncertain. Beneath the text was a photograph from the gala, Grant and Celeste on stage, me in the background, seated, hands folded. The image had been cropped so I looked cold. Lydia wanted to burn the museum down metaphorically. Margaret wanted me to attend. "I hate that you two agree," I said. Margaret adjusted her glasses. "We do not agree. Lydia wants spectacle. I want evidence." "I contain multitudes," Lydia said. James secured 2 seats through a trustee contact. I wore a navy dress, low heels, and my grandfather's watch. Not armor exactly. A reminder. The museum lobby glowed with warm lights. Donors gathered beneath a suspended glass sculpture. Servers carried wine. A string quartet played near the staircase. Everything looked tasteful enough to make manipulation feel cultured. People noticed me the second I entered. Their conversations dipped, then resumed at a thinner volume. I heard fragments. "That is her, Grant's wife. I heard she froze the money. Poor Celeste. Is Grant coming?" Grant was already there. He stood near the West Gallery with Celeste at his side, both surrounded by donors. He wore a grey suit and an expression of solemn resolve. Celeste wore cream. She looked less glittering than at the gala, more wounded, clever. Wounded women received softer questions. Her eyes found me across the room. She smiled, then she touched Grant's sleeve. He turned for a moment. His face changed, not anger, not surprise, something like hunger. The look of a man who thought the person slipping away might still be pulled back if he found the right tone. He came toward me. Lydia shifted beside me. "Do you want me to bite?" "No." Grant stopped 3 feet away. You invited my donor profile." He winced. Celeste's team sent broadly. Celeste's team keeps finding my information. His voice dropped. Please do not start here. I looked around. Isn't that the point of inviting me? He rubbed the bridge of his nose. I am trying to keep this from becoming uglier. No, you are trying to keep ugly private. Before he could answer, Celeste joined us. Evelyn, she said softly. Thank you for coming. Your invitation was moving. Her smile held. I hope tonight helps you see what is at stake. Transparency, a flicker. Children, she said. Then you should open your books. The donor nearest us turned slightly. Celeste's smile tightened. I understand. You are upset, she said, pitching her voice just loud enough for nearby listeners. But not every act of service can be reduced to suspicion. No, some can be reduced to invoices. Grant's eyes warned me. Celeste placed a hand over her heart. I have spent years building programs for children who have lost their sense of safety. I will not apologize for fighting for them. Will you apologize for spending money you had not received? The nearby donor stopped pretending not to listen. Celeste's lips parted. That is a serious accusation. It is a serious question. Grant stepped in. Evelyn, this is not the time. I almost laughed. It never is. A museum staff member approached. Nervous. Ms. Vale. We are ready for remarks. Celeste's face transformed. The wounded woman became the brave leader. Excuse me, she said. Grant leaned toward me as she walked away. Do not make me respond publicly. I looked at him. You already did. You just used anonymous sources. He froze. I walked past him into the lobby seating area. Celeste took the small stage. Tonight is not about conflict, she began. It is about courage. It is about remembering that when adults fight over control, children suffer first. Heads nodded. I took out my phone and began recording. She spoke beautifully. I had to give her that. She told a story about a boy who painted his nightmares blue. She described a girl who spoke for the first time in weeks after drawing a yellow door. She thanked donors who understood that generosity required trust. Then she paused. Unfortunately, she said, our foundation has faced an unexpected challenge. The room quieted. A promised transformational gift was withdrawn at the last moment due to private circumstances beyond our control. Her eyes found mine. Many have asked whether we will fight. The answer is yes. We will fight for every child who was promised healing. Applause rose. Grant stood near the stage, looking solemn. Celeste continued, I ask tonight not for anger, but for courage. If you believe children should not suffer because of adult fear, stand with us. Adult fear, that was me, apparently. Fear in navy dress and low heels. She stepped away from the microphone to applause. Grant embraced her with one arm. The photographer caught it. I caught it too. Then a reporter from a local culture channel approached me. Mrs. Mercer, do you have a comment on Ms. Vale's remarks? Grant moved immediately. No, she does not. I looked at him. He realized his mistake half a second too late. The reporter's camera tilted toward us. I smiled. I can speak for myself. Grant's face tightened. The reporter held out her phone. Did you withdraw the pledge? There was no authorized pledge to withdraw, I said. The lobby quieted around us. Celeste's head turned. I continued, voice steady. No valid donation was approved by me or by the Hart Family Trust. Any claim that funds were guaranteed is false. Grant said. Evelyn, the reporter leaned in. Are you saying your signature was forged? Margaret had warned me about overstatement. I am saying I did not sign the authorization used to represent the gift. The reporter's eyes widened. Celeste came down from the stage. This is inappropriate. Opening your books would be appropriate, I said. Her face flushed. Grant stepped between us. My wife has been under emotional strain. The old move, the public move, the room heard it. I felt people watching my face, waiting to see if I would crack open and prove him right. I did not. My husband is not my doctor, I said. He is, however, one of the people who submitted a donation in my name without valid authority. A murmur moved through the lobby. Grant's face went pale. Celeste whispered, how dare you? I looked at her. You built a public event around my silence. Do not be shocked when I stop providing it. The reporter asked, will the Hart Trust pursue legal action? That is under review. Not yes, not no. Enough. Grant grabbed my elbow and steered me 3 steps away from the camera before Lydia moved between us. Hands off, she said. He released me. The movement had been small, but the camera caught it. I saw the red recording light. Grant saw it too. His mouth tightened. Celeste turned to the donors. I apologize. This is exactly the kind of private turmoil I hoped we could rise above tonight. A woman in a burgundy dress spoke from the front row. Ms. Vale, did the foundation have written confirmation of the gift? Celeste blinked. Another donor asked, was the board aware the trust had not approved it? Grant said, this is not a board meeting. The burgundy dress woman looked at him. No, it is a donor event. That makes it worse. The room shifted, not fully, not in my favor yet, but uncertainty had entered. Celeste felt it. Her eyes flashed toward me with something hot and unguarded. Then she walked close enough that only I could hear her. A good woman would have let him fix this. I smiled. A good foundation would not need stolen money. Her face hardened. The mask dropped for 1 second. And this time, more than I saw it, the reporter's camera was still recording. Celeste recovered and turned away, but damage had crossed her face like a shadow. Outside the museum, Lydia exhaled loudly. That was delicious. It was not enough. No, but it was an appetizer. My phone buzzed. Margaret, do not speak further tonight. The clip is already circulating. Grant's counsel just sent a proposed divorce and release agreement. Do not react until we review. A second message followed. They are trying to trade marriage for immunity. I stood on the museum steps, cold air moving over my skin. Behind me, through the glass doors, Grant was surrounded by donors asking questions he had never expected to answer. Celeste stood beside him, still beautiful, no longer untouched. For the first time since the gala, I felt something other than anger, momentum. The next morning, my face was on 3 websites. Not flattering photos, of course not. In one, I looked cold. In another, mid-sentence. In a third, Grant's hand was on my elbow and Lydia was stepping forward, making the whole thing look like a confrontation outside a nightclub instead of a donor reception inside a museum. The headlines disagreed with one another. Heart Heiress claims unauthorized charity pledge. Bright Harbor funding drama deepens. Jealous wife or fraud victim. Mercer marriage explodes in public. Lydia hated the third one so much she walked around the apartment muttering fraud victim like an incantation. Margaret told me to eat breakfast. I am being dissected online, I said. Then do not do it on an empty stomach. I ate toast because obedience to sensible women still seemed wise. By noon, Grant's proposed divorce agreement sat on Margaret's conference table. It was not called a divorce agreement. It was called a marital stabilization and asset clarity framework, which made Lydia laugh so hard Margaret asked her to step into the hallway. The framework proposed that Grant and I would remain legally married for at least 12 months. During that time, I would confirm no malicious intent by Grant regarding the Bright Harbor pledge. I would approve a reduced donation of $800,000 to Bright Harbor. I would agree not to pursue civil or criminal claims against Grant, Celeste, or Bright Harbor Foundation. In exchange, Grant would commit to renewed marital counseling and publicly affirm his dedication to the marriage. I read the last page twice. He thinks staying married to him is compensation, I said. Margaret's mouth twitched. That appears to be the theory. What happens if I refuse? She slid another document toward me. It was the alternative filing Grant's lawyer had prepared, a divorce petition accusing me of financial cruelty, reputational harm, emotional instability, and deliberate sabotage of charitable obligations tied to our marital reputation. I stared at the phrase emotional instability. There it was in black and white. My grief, my sleep medication, my refusal, all arranged into a costume they wanted me to wear. They will file this, I asked, if you do not sign the framework. Likely. Good. Margaret looked at me. Let them, I said. James, seated near the window, spoke quietly. It will be unpleasant. So was being robbed politely. Margaret nodded once. Then we answer first. We filed before Grant did. Not for divorce yet. Margaret wanted strategy, sequence, clean lanes. First, the trust filed a petition for emergency declaratory relief confirming no authorized pledge existed and seeking preservation of all communications related to the Bright Harbor representations. Second, we sent notice to Grant, Celeste, and Bright Harbor to preserve documents. Third, I authorized Margaret to prepare a separate civil claim if evidence supported it. Fourth, I called a locksmith for the apartment even though Grant did not have a key. Control sometimes began with small metal things. That afternoon, Diane came to my apartment building. She did not come alone. Grant's Aunt Marjorie came with her, along with his cousin Elise and a man I recognized from Mercer family gatherings as their long-suffering family accountant. They appeared in the lobby carrying moral outrage and one gift bag. The doorman called me, "Mrs. Mercer, your mother-in-law is here." I closed my eyes. "Please tell her I am not receiving visitors." He paused. "She says it is urgent. Everything she says is urgent." In the background, I heard Diane's voice. "Tell her this is family." I looked at Lydia, who was eating noodles from a carton at my kitchen counter. She pointed her chopsticks at me. "Do not go down there." I went down there not because Diane deserved it, because she had used lobby staff as unwilling audience, and I refused to let her stage manage my absence. I took my phone, turned on recording, and entered the elevator. Diane stood in the marble lobby like a queen offended by weather. She wore camel cashmere and pearls. Marjorie looked anxious. Elise looked curious. The accountant looked like he wanted to be a chair. Diane held out the gift bag. "I brought your things, my things, from the house. Since you insist on behaving like a runaway, I did not take the bag. What do you want?" Diane's face tightened. "Privacy. Then you chose the wrong lobby." Marjorie touched Diane's arm. "Maybe we should go upstairs." "No," I said. Diane inhaled. "Fine. You want witnesses. Let them hear this. You are destroying my son over a misunderstanding because your pride is wounded." The doorman suddenly found paperwork fascinating. I said, "Grant submitted an unauthorized pledge using my name. Grant made a generous decision under pressure, with my money, with family resources. My inheritance is not family resources." Diane's eyes flashed. "You keep saying that as if marriage means nothing." "Marriage did mean something. That is why I did not expect my husband to copy my signature." Marjorie gasped softly. Elise looked at Diane. Diane snapped, "Do not exaggerate." I opened my phone and displayed the authorization signature beside a photo of my actual wet signature. I did not hand it to her. I held it up long enough for the room to see. "This is not mine." The accountant leaned forward despite himself. Diane's mouth hardened. "Electronic signatures vary." "Not when I never signed electronically." The lobby was quiet now. Diane lowered her voice. "You think you are so clever. But people already see what you are. Cold, spoiled, childless, sitting on money while families need help." There it was, childless. She had never said it directly before. She had circled it at holidays, placed it between serving dishes, wrapped it in concern. Grant and I had tried for 2 years, then stopped trying because every month became another room where I was alone. Diane knew. Of course she knew. For a second, the word hit its target, then it fell. "You are not here because of children," I said. "You are here because I stopped paying for your life." Her face went white. Marjorie whispered, "Diane." I continued, "Your committee dues, your floral accounts, your family travel reimbursements, the dinners Grant called investor development. I stopped them. That is why you came." Elise looked sharply at Diane. The accountant closed his eyes. Diane stepped closer. "You ungrateful little parasite." I almost smiled. The word was so poorly chosen it became a gift. Parasites usually take money. "Diane, they do not cancel transfers." Someone behind the reception desk coughed. Diane realized she had lost control of the room. She shoved the gift bag toward me. I did not take it. It fell against my shoes. A scarf spilled out, along with 2 framed photographs and a small silver box from my vanity. "You forgot these," Diane said. I looked down. One photograph was from my wedding. The other was of Grant and me at Diane's anniversary party. The silver box held the pearl earrings grandfather gave me when I turned 21. My stomach tightened. "You went through my vanity." Diane lifted her chin. "It is my son's house. It is half mine. For now," she said. I crouched, picked up the silver box, and left the photographs on the floor. Diane stared. "Take them," she said. "No, they are your memories." "No," I said, "they are evidence of bad lighting." Elise made a sound that might have been a laugh. Diane turned on her. "Do you find this funny?" Elise looked away. I stood. "Leave my building." Diane's voice dropped. "You will regret making an enemy of this family." "I regret making a bank of it." She left shaking with rage. The accountant lingered for half a second, then he said, very quietly, Mrs. Mercer, you should ask about the home renovation invoices from 2022. Diane turned. Robert. He went pale and followed her out. I stood in the lobby with the silver box in my hand. The doorman looked at me. Should I throw away the photos? He asked. I looked down at Grant's smiling face on the floor. No, I said. Please give them to my lawyer. That evening, Nora sent the invoice packet. The file arrived in a password-protected folder with no message except, I cannot carry this anymore. Inside were scanned contracts, vendor bills, internal approvals, and one spreadsheet that made Margaret call me within 30 seconds. Evelyn, she said, the foundation listed the Heart Pledge as restricted funds, then used expected unrestricted cash to cover Gala luxuries while telling vendors restricted money was incoming. Is that illegal? It is a very bad idea. We need forensic review. There is more, I said. I told her about Robert and the 2022 renovation invoices. Margaret went silent, then she said, send me every home renovation record you have. By midnight, we found it, a renovation invoice for the Mercer House Library, billed as private residence improvement, had been partially reimbursed through a Mercer family philanthropic account as donor cultivation space upgrade. The check request had Grant's initials. The supporting note said EHM, approved family use of heart-related donor space. I had approved new shelves, not tax fiction. Margaret's voice on speaker was calm, but underneath it I heard steel. This is no longer only about Bright Harbor. I looked at the silver box on my table. Grandfather's pearls gleamed under the lamp. No, I said, it is about how long they have been practicing. Grant asked for one final meeting, not through text, not through Diane, through his lawyer, which meant Margaret could not dismiss it as harassment. The request was framed as a settlement discussion, neutral location. His lawyer wrote, both parties present, limited agenda, no media, no extended family. Margaret read it and said, he is either afraid or planning something. Can it be both? With Grant, almost certainly. We agreed to meet at the Mercer House because it allowed me to retrieve remaining documents and because Margaret insisted on bringing a witness. Grant objected to Lydia, to James, and to any recording device. Margaret replied with one sentence: no recording, no meeting. So Grant agreed to recording in writing. That was how I knew he thought he could still control the room. We met on a Thursday evening in the living room where Diane had once hosted a holiday party and introduced me to a senator as the artistic one. A fire burned in the fireplace. Someone had arranged white roses on the coffee table. Grant's apology flowers had become set dressing. His lawyer, Paul Redmond, sat beside him. Paul was compact, polished, and visibly unhappy to be there. He had the look of a man who preferred clean corporate disputes to marriages with forged signatures. Margaret sat beside me. Lydia sat near the window, officially as my support person, unofficially as a woman who could weaponize silence. A digital recorder sat in the center of the coffee table. Grant looked at it like it was vulgar. Margaret pressed the button. This meeting is being recorded with consent of all parties. Paul nodded. Confirmed. Grant did not speak. Margaret looked at him. Confirmed, he said. We began with the pledge. Paul tried to soften the language. Mr. Mercer acknowledges that the documentation process was imperfect. Margaret said, unauthorized. Paul cleared his throat. Incomplete, unauthorized. Grant's hand tightened on his knee. Paul tried again. The goal tonight is to avoid escalation. The Bright Harbor situation can still be resolved if Mrs. Mercer authorizes a partial gift and all parties agree not to pursue claims. No, I said. Grant looked at me. You have not heard the offer. I heard it at the lobby, the dinner, the apartment, and the museum. Paul shifted. Mrs. Mercer, litigation will expose both sides. Margaret smiled pleasantly. That is often how evidence works. Grant leaned forward. Evie, I said nothing. His eyes searched my face for the old door. I know you are hurt, he said. I know I mishandled things. I let pressure get to me. Celeste was desperate. The foundation was under strain. I believed you would support the cause because you have always cared about art access. Did you believe I would support it before or after you copied my signature? Paul's eyes flicked to Grant. Grant said, I did not copy it. Who did? His jaw tightened. A staff member prepared documents from materials available to them. What staff member? Silence. Margaret wrote something down, Paul said. We are not here to identify administrative errors. No, I said, you are here to bury them. Grant's eyes flashed. I am here to save what is left of our marriage. That made Lydia move slightly. She did not speak, but the disbelief had weight. I looked at Grant. What is left? He swallowed for one moment. He looked tired in a way that was not staged. 6 years, he said. A home, plans, history, trust. He looked away. Love? I asked. His eyes returned to mine. I loved you, he said. Past tense can enter a room quietly and still break furniture. Margaret looked at me, but I kept my gaze on Grant. When did you stop? I asked. Paul stirred. This is not productive. It is for me. Grant rubbed his thumb over his wedding band. He was still wearing his. I wondered whether that was strategy or denial. I did not stop all at once, he said. The honesty surprised me. Celeste understood pressure. He continued. She understood what it means to build something public. You retreated after Arthur died. You became suspicious of anything tied to money. Every conversation became a test. I felt the old guilt rise by habit, then collapse under the weight of facts. My grandfather died, I said. I grieved. You called it retreat because I stopped hosting your investors for 3 months. I needed you. You needed my name. That is not fair. Fair would have been asking. He exhaled sharply. Fine, I should have asked. And if I said no, his silence answered. I leaned forward. Say it, Paul said. Mrs. Mercer, no, he wanted honesty. Say it, Grant. If you asked me and I said no, what would you have done? Grant looked at the recorder, then at me. I would have tried to convince you. And if I still said no, his mouth tightened. Grant, he snapped. Then I would have found a way to make you understand the importance of it. The room went still. Margaret's pen stopped. I smiled faintly. Thank you. He realized it then. His face changed. That is not what I meant. What did you mean? I meant I would have kept talking. No, I said. You meant exactly what you did. Paul closed his eyes briefly. Grant stood and walked to the fireplace. You are twisting this. I turned to Margaret. Do we have enough? Grant spun back. Enough for what? Margaret said. For tonight. Yes. Paul looked at her with something close to resignation. Grant's voice rose. This is insane. You are all acting like I stole from a stranger. She is my wife. I stood. That is why it is worse. He stared at me. You knew my grief. You knew my grandfather's intentions. You knew I hated public scenes. You knew I would rather swallow pain than make people uncomfortable. You knew exactly what I could live with, and you built your plan on that. His face went grey at the edges. The phrase had landed. He knew I had the email. Celeste gave you those emails. He said. No, Nora did. Anger moved across his face. That woman is finished. And there you are again, Paul said, sharply. Grant. Too late. Margaret wrote another note. Grant saw it. Stop writing every damn word like I am some criminal. You keep helping, Lydia said. He pointed at her. You stay out of this. I stepped between them. No, you do not get to intimidate my witness in my house. His laugh was ugly. Your house. Now it is your house. Half mine. Remember. For now, he said. The words echoed Diane from the lobby. I looked at him for a long moment. Then I reached into my folder and pulled out the renovation invoice. Grant's face went blank. What is that? Paul asked. A 2022 library renovation invoice, Margaret said. Partially reimbursed through a Mercer philanthropic account using Evelyn's initials as approval. Paul's head turned slowly toward Grant. Grant said. That was handled by accounting. Robert, I asked. He said nothing, because Robert suggested I ask about it. His eyes hardened. Another crack. Paul took the invoice from Margaret and read it. His expression got worse with each line. This is outside tonight's agenda, he said. It is part of the pattern, Margaret replied. Grant sat down slowly. For the first time, he looked less like a cornered husband and more like a man watching rooms in his own house catch fire. We can settle, he said. His voice had changed. No velvet now, no husband tone, just fear with a tie. On what terms? Margaret asked. Grant looked at me. You approve a reduced Bright Harbor gift. We issue a joint statement. We divorce quietly if that is what you want. No lawsuits, no referrals, no public accusations. If that is what I want. I repeated. He closed his eyes. Evelyn. I looked at the roses on the coffee table. White roses, always white. Clean, expensive, scentless things. No. Paul leaned in. Mrs. Mercer, consider the cost. Litigation is not healing. Neither is hush money. Grant's face twisted. You want to punish me. I want the record corrected. You want me humiliated. You chose the stage. He looked at me then. Really looked, as if seeing for the first time that the woman in front of him was not the one he had counted on surviving everything quietly. Do you hate me? He asked. The question was so late it almost sounded childish. I thought about it. No, I said. Something like relief touched his face. Then I finished. I do not trust you enough to hate you. Hate still assumes the person matters at the center of the story. You moved yourself out of mine. His relief died. I picked up my folder. This meeting is over. Grant stood too. Evie, wait. I kept walking. He followed me into the foyer. Margaret and Lydia were behind me. But he spoke as if we were alone. Do not go to the donor dinner. Tomorrow. I turned. There it was. Tomorrow, the emergency bridge event, the final stage. Why? I asked. His eyes flickered. Because it will be painful. For whom? He did not answer. I stepped closer. What are you planning? Nothing. I smiled. You have always been bad at that word. His phone buzzed on the entry table. Celeste, a preview flashed. Everything is set for tomorrow. If Evelyn shows, let her. We can use it. Grant grabbed the phone. Too late. I read enough. So did Margaret. The recorder was still running in Lydia's hand. Grant looked at us for 1 second. No one spoke. Then I said, thank you for confirming the invitation. I walked out of the house I had once tried to make warm. Outside, the air smelled like rain. Margaret touched my arm. We need to prepare carefully. I looked back at the lit windows. At Grant standing inside with Celeste's message in his hand. No, I said. We need to let them prepare. The second Bright Harbor event was smaller, but more dangerous. The first gala had been about applause. This one was about pressure. They held it in the same hotel, not the grand ballroom this time, but the Marlowe's private atrium, a glass-roofed space filled with olive trees in enormous stone planters. At night, the city lights reflected overhead, making the room feel suspended between wealth and weather. The guest list was selective. Foundation board members, major donors, 2 local reporters, Grant's investors, Diane and her circle, a handful of art world people who knew my grandfather's name well enough to be curious. Celeste had designed the trap beautifully. If I did not attend, they could frame me as hiding. If I attended and stayed silent, they could claim I accepted the revised pledge. If I attended and objected, they could film me refusing money for children again. They had prepared for the Evelyn they understood. They had not prepared for the one they had made. I arrived with Margaret, James, and Lydia, not behind me. Beside me. I wore black again, but not the silk dress from the first gala. This one had clean lines, long sleeves, no sparkle. My hair was pinned back. My only jewelry was my grandfather's watch. At the entrance, a young woman with a clipboard looked at my name and froze. Mrs. Mercer, Evelyn Hart. I said. Her pen hovered. Of course. Small correction. Large silence inside. Celeste stood near a display of children's paintings. Grant stood beside her. Diane sat in the front row like a judge before sentencing. When Grant saw me, his face tightened, then smoothed. He had decided on dignity tonight. That meant he was afraid. Celeste came forward first. Evelyn, she said, warm enough to frost glass. Thank you for coming. I was told you could use me. Her eyes sharpened. Grant reached us. Let us keep this respectful. I brought my lawyer. That is respect with footnotes. Lydia coughed into her hand. Grant's eyes cut toward her, then back to me. Tonight is not the place for theatrics. You keep booking stages and saying that. Celeste's smile held. No one wants conflict. Then why is there a press row? She glanced toward the 2 reporters. For transparency. I looked at Margaret. Did you hear that? I did, James said, encouraging. Celeste did not like being mocked by old money. I saw it in the slight tightening around her mouth. A hotel manager approached Margaret quietly. They exchanged a few words. Margaret nodded. Grant noticed. What was that? Venue logistics, Margaret said. His face hardened. You have no authority here. No. Margaret replied. But the hotel has an interest in knowing whether funds represented to them actually exist. Grant looked toward Celeste. There The first tremor, the program began at 7:30. Celeste took the small stage beneath a canopy of hanging lights. Behind her, a screen displayed Bright Harbor's logo and the words "Bridge the Promise, Promise." The nerve of it almost impressed me. She spoke first. Her voice was soft, controlled, and threaded with pain. "Many of you stood with us last week when we announced a gift that would have transformed our work. Since then, confusion, fear, and private conflict have threatened that promise." She paused. I felt the room look at me without looking. "But I believe promises matter. I believe children should not pay the price for adult hesitation, and I believe generosity, once spoken, should be honored." Applause, not as strong as the first gala, but enough. Then Grant stepped onto the stage. My husband looked handsome under pressure. I had forgotten that, or maybe I had trained myself not to care. His suit was dark, his face was grave, he held no notes. Grant liked people to think sincerity did not need paper. "Thank you, Celeste," he said, "and thank you to everyone here who has chosen patience over gossip." A few people nodded. He looked at me. "My wife is here tonight." The room turned. I did not move. Grant continued, "Evelyn and I have had private disagreements about process, timing, and communication. I take responsibility for not making her feel fully included." Margaret made a tiny note on her pad, "Not making her feel," the language of men who could stab you and apologize for the lighting. Grant placed a hand over his heart. "But I also know my wife. I know her compassion. I know her love for art and healing. I know that once the confusion is cleared, she will not allow fear to stand in the way of helping children." There it was, the cage, lowered gently. People waited. Grant smiled at me with aching husbandly hope. "Evie," he said, "will you stand with us tonight?" A murmur moved through the room. Cameras lifted. Diane's eyes bored into me. Celeste looked almost radiant. This was the picture they wanted. The difficult wife softened, the wounded husband forgiving her, the noble ex-girlfriend accepting the restored gift, the money flowing where Grant had already promised it. I stood. The room exhaled. Grant's smile widened. I walked toward the stage. Each step sounded clear against the atrium floor. I felt no rush, no heat, no panic. My body had learned something since the first gala. Public rooms did not kill women who told the truth. They only felt like they might. Grant extended his hand to help me onto the stage. I did not take it. I climbed the steps alone. The microphone stood between us. I adjusted it lower. Grant chuckled softly, trying to reclaim the mood. "My wife has always preferred precision." I looked at the audience. My grandfather did too. The room quieted. Grant's smile faded by a fraction. I continued, "Since my name, my family trust, and my grandfather's legacy have been used repeatedly in public statements, I will be precise." Celeste moved toward the edge of the stage. "Evelyn, perhaps this should be handled privately." I looked at her. "You printed it in a gala program." A few people murmured. Margaret stood near the front, still as stone. I turned to the screen operator at the side of the room. A hotel technician looked at Margaret. Margaret nodded. Grant's face changed. "What is this?" he asked. "The process you mentioned." The screen behind us shifted. Gone was Bridge the Promise. In its place appeared the Hart Family Trust notice. "No Hart Family Trust funds have been approved, scheduled, pledged, released, reserved, or otherwise committed to Bright Harbor Foundation." The room went silent, completely silent. Not polite silent, not confused silent, the kind of silence that begins collecting witnesses. Grant stepped toward me. "Turn that off." I spoke into the microphone. "This notice was sent before business opened the morning after the first gala. It confirmed that no valid pledge existed." Celeste's face had gone pale. "This is a violation of event protocol." I clicked the small remote Margaret had given me. The next slide appeared, my alleged electronic signature beside my real wet signature. The H too high, the final are wrong. I did not sign the authorization used to represent the gift. A board member stood halfway from his chair. "Celeste." She did not answer. Grant said, "Evelyn." "Stop." I clicked again. Trust clause 4.3. Charitable gifts exceeding $100,000 require beneficiary wet signature, trustee approval, and recorded donor intent. James stood. As senior trustee of the Hart Family Trust, he said, voice calm and carrying, "I confirm no approval was requested or granted for the Bright Harbor Pledge." The room erupted. Questions overlapped. "What does that mean? Who submitted it? Was the pledge fake? Did the foundation know? Celeste stepped to the microphone. There has been a misunderstanding. I looked at her. Then the next slide should help. I clicked, an email appeared. Celeste, if Evelyn hesitates, can you handle her? We cannot lose the heart name now. Grant, she will not make a public issue. She hates scenes. Once it is announced, she will adjust. Celeste, you know her better than I do. Grant, I know what she can live with. The room did not just go silent this time, it withdrew from them. I felt it. The donors, the board members, the reporters, even Diane's friends. Their sympathy did not rush to me all at once. But it left Grant and Celeste like water draining from a basin. Grant stared at the screen. Celeste whispered, that was private. I turned to her. So was my inheritance. A camera flashed. Grant moved toward the technician. Turn it off. The hotel security lead stepped in front of him. Sir, he said, please remain on the stage. Grant looked around as if the room had betrayed him. It had not. It had simply stopped obeying. I clicked again. The next slide showed Bright Harbor's internal budget revision listing the Hart Mercer legacy gift as guaranteed revenue, followed by invoices for Gala expansion, media consulting, donor experience enhancement, and celebrity hosting fees. Nora Pike stood in the back of the room. Her hands trembled, but she stood. Celeste saw her. The mask cracked. Nora, she said, voice sharp, you had no right. Nora's chin lifted. Neither did you. That was the moment the room turned, not because of me alone, because an insider had spoken, because the numbers were on the screen, because Grant looked furious, not innocent, because Celeste had snapped at the finance director before remembering to look wounded. A board member named Alistair Crane stepped forward. Ms. Vale, he said, did the foundation incur obligations based on an unapproved pledge? Celeste's mouth opened. Grant interrupted. The foundation acted in good faith based on my representation. The sentence rang through the microphone he had forgotten was still live. Paul Redmond, Grant's lawyer, was not in the room. I wondered if Grant missed him. Alistair turned slowly toward Grant. Your representation. Grant realized what he had said. I saw it happen. His face froze. Margaret stepped forward then. That statement is consistent with documents already preserved. Grant pointed at me. This is a setup. I looked at him. No, I said into the microphone. The setup was yours. This is the receipt. The atrium doors opened. A man in a dark suit entered with a folder in his hand. Grant saw him and frowned. Margaret's expression did not change. The man walked down the center aisle while every person in the room watched. Grant took one step back. The man climbed the stage stairs. Grant Mercer, he asked. Grant did not answer. The man held out the folder. You have been served. For years. Grant had treated public rooms as allies. Boardrooms loved him. Dining rooms forgave him. Hotel ballrooms reflected him back, taller, kinder, more impressive than he was. He knew where to stand in photographs. He knew when to lower his voice. He knew how to make powerful people feel they were witnessing integrity. But no room loves a man holding a lawsuit. The folder stayed extended between Grant and the process server. Grant stared at it as if paper could be refused by disbelief. Take it, the man said. The microphone caught him. A ripple moved through the audience. Grant finally reached out. His fingers closed around the folder. The camera flashes began, not the warm flashes from the first gala. These were sharper, hungrier. No one in the atrium was pretending this was about children anymore. What is this? Celeste demanded. Margaret answered before I could. A civil complaint filed by the Hart Family Trust against Grant Mercer for fraudulent misrepresentation, attempted conversion of trust assets, unauthorized use of donor identity, and related claims. Additional filings are under review. Grant's head snapped toward her. You served me here. I spoke into the microphone. You announced my inheritance here. His mouth opened, but no sound came. Diane stood from the front row. This is obscene. The room turned toward her. Diane seemed to remember the audience and softened her voice too late. This is a family matter, she said. A woman from the museum board said. It stopped being a family matter when donor materials went public. Diane looked at her as if slapped. Celeste reached for Grant's arm. He pulled away without thinking. It was small, it was fatal. Everyone saw it. Celeste saw it. Most of all, her face changed, not into grief, but calculation. She stepped back half a pace, distancing herself from the man she had let stand between her and the consequences. Grant noticed for the first time that night. Pain crossed his face. Not for me, for her. That clarified something I had not known I still needed clarified. Alistair Crane turned to the Foundation board members clustered near the front. We need to convene immediately, Celeste said. Alistair, not here. Yes, he said, here. You made the appeal here. Donors were solicited here. We will ask questions here. The reporters moved closer. Celeste lifted her chin. I will not be interrogated in a hostile environment created by a vindictive spouse. Nora stepped forward from the back. Her voice shook, but it carried. I have the original invoice packet. Celeste turned on her. You are a disgruntled employee who violated confidentiality. I am the finance director who told you not to book the expanded Gala package without confirmed funds. The room murmured. Nora continued, stronger now. I told you the Heart Trust had not verified the transfer. You said Grant would handle his wife. Every head turned to Grant. He looked at Celeste. She looked away. I watched him understand the first rule of shared wrongdoing. When the ship sinks, people stop calling each other beloved and start pointing toward the leak. Margaret moved beside Nora. Ms. Pike has provided documents to council and is prepared to cooperate with the Foundation board and any relevant inquiry. Celeste laughed, but the sound was too bright. This is ridiculous. I built this foundation. I gave up everything for it. Nora's face hardened. You charged your Gala hairstylist to program development. A shocked laugh burst from somewhere near the bar. Celeste flushed. That is taken out of context. Nora pulled papers from her bag. You billed 3 wardrobe consultations under donor education. Nora, Celeste warned, you told me visibility was service. The sentence landed beautifully because it sounded exactly like Celeste. Alistair took the papers. Another board member, a woman with steel grey hair, read over his shoulder. Grant stepped down from the stage, folder in hand, and came toward me. Margaret moved subtly between us. He stopped. His voice was low. You have no idea what you have done. Yes, I said, I do. You think this makes you look strong. No, I think it makes the record harder to lie about. His eyes were bright, almost feverish. You humiliated me in front of everyone. I looked around the atrium. People were watching, but not interrupting. For once, the public room belonged to truth, not performance. You humiliated yourself, I said. I only stopped helping you hide it. He flinched. Diane came to his side. Grant, say nothing else. That was new. Diane, who had never missed a chance to command me, now understood that her son's words had become dangerous. Lydia appeared beside me. Too late for that. Probably. Diane glared at her. You smug little parasite. I looked at Diane. Careful. Last time you used that word in a lobby, it did not go well. Her face drained. Grant looked between us. What lobby? Diane's mouth shut. Another small fracture. Alistair returned with 2 board members. Ms. Vale, he said formally, pending review. You are suspended from operational authority over Bright Harbor Foundation. Celeste went still. You cannot do that. We can. We just voted. This is my foundation. It is a non-profit organization with a board, the gray-haired woman said. Not your personal brand. Celeste's face twisted. There she was. Not the wounded philanthropist. Not the soft savior of children. A woman watching her stage lights turn off. You are making a mistake, she said. Alistair looked at Nora's papers. We already did. Grant turned away from her. Not toward me, away from all of us. He walked toward the bar, still holding the lawsuit folder. An investor intercepted him. Then another. Their voices were too low for the microphone, but their faces were clear. Concern, distance, containment. The Mercer magic was leaking. Diane followed him, pearls trembling against her throat. I stepped down from the stage. My knees felt strange, not weak exactly, but newly aware of gravity. Margaret touched my elbow. You did well. I feel sick. That is also appropriate. Nora came toward me, clutching her empty folder now like a shield. I did not know if I could do it, she said. You did. She nodded, eyes wet. Is it enough? No, Margaret said. But it is a very good start. Celeste suddenly moved toward the side exit. 2 board members followed. A reporter called her name. She did not stop. Grant saw her leaving. Celeste, he called. She stopped at the door, turned, and looked at him for a second. I saw their entire story in the space between them. The nostalgia, the flattery, The fantasy that they were better together than the lives they had actually built. The borrowed money, the borrowed morality, the borrowed stage. Grant took one step toward her. She shook her head once, not in heartbreak, in warning, "Do not bring me down with you." Then she left. Grant stood in the middle of the atrium with my lawsuit in his hand and watched his great love choose self-preservation. I felt no victory in that moment, only clarity. Diane turned on me. "Are you satisfied?" I thought about the first gala, the way she had squeezed my knee and told me to smile, the way she had called my grandfather's money idol, the way she had weaponized my childlessness in a lobby because she thought pain made good leverage. "No," I said, "satisfaction is too small. What more could you possibly want?" "My name back." Grant turned. He heard that. The noise of the room seemed to fall away from his face. "Evie," he said. "No," one word, clean, final. He walked toward me. Slower this time. "I know I hurt you." I almost laughed. "You know that now." I was wrong. The words were supposed to matter. Maybe a year earlier they would have. Maybe if he had said them in our kitchen before the gala, before the signature, before the smear, before the second event, before the lawsuit folder, I would have bent toward them. But timing is not a detail. Timing is character under pressure. "You were caught," I said. "That is different." His eyes filled. I had seen Grant perform emotion. But this was not quite performance. It was loss, real loss, not of me as a person maybe, but of the world where I absorbed the cost of his choices. "Do not divorce me like this," he said. "Like what?" "In public, with lawyers, with everyone watching." I looked around the atrium. "Grant, you turned our marriage into a donor announcement." His face crumpled for half a second, then pride patched it. "I can fight this. Yes, I can make this ugly." "You already did. I know things about you." I smiled sadly. "I know things about me too. The difference is I am no longer ashamed of surviving them." He had no answer for that. Margaret stepped beside me. "All further communication through counsel." Diane laughed bitterly. "You sound like a machine." I looked at her. "No, I sound like a woman with boundaries." Lydia whispered, "Put that on a mug." Despite everything, I almost smiled. We left through the main doors, not the side exit, not the service hall, the main doors. As we crossed the lobby, people stepped aside, some stared, some pretended not to. One older woman I recognized from the Calder board touched my arm lightly. "Your grandfather was a good man," she said. My throat tightened. "Yes," I said. "He was." Outside, cameras waited. Margaret had warned me not to speak, but one reporter asked, "Mrs. Mercer, what do you want people to understand tonight?" I paused. Grant was behind me somewhere. Celeste was gone. Diane was probably already calling someone to rewrite the story. I looked into the camera. "That generosity without consent is not generosity," I said. "It is control." Then I walked away. In the car, Lydia let out a breath she seemed to have been holding for an hour. "Do you realize what just happened?" I looked down at my bare left hand. "Yes." "What?" I watched the hotel lights shrink through the rear window. "He finally got sued in front of everyone," I said, "and I did not feel the need to save him." The legal process did not end that night. Public collapse is dramatic. Paperwork is patient. Grant tried to fight at first. Of course he did. His lawyer filed responses with words like misunderstanding, implied consent, marital course of dealing, and reputational injury. Margaret answered with documents. James answered with trust clauses. Nora answered with invoice packets. The hotel answered with contracts. The foundation board answered with meeting minutes showing Celeste had pushed expenses before funds were confirmed. Grant's strongest defense was that I had trusted him before. Margaret called that emotionally revealing and legally insufficient. 3 weeks after the second gala, we sat across from Grant and Paul Redmond in a private mediation room downtown. No chandelier, no orchestra, no donors, just beige walls, bad coffee, and the consequences of signatures. Grant looked thinner. He still wore his wedding ring. I did not. Diane was not there. Paul had likely forbidden it. Celeste was not there either. Bright Harbor's board had separated its claims from Grant's and suspended her pending full investigation. The lifestyle site had removed the worst article after Margaret sent them the preservation notice and Grant's recorded threat about my grief. The internet had done what it always did. It feasted, judged, corrected itself partially, then moved on. But the people who mattered had not moved on. Donors asked questions, investors asked harder ones. The Mercer family accountant had turned over renovation records through council. Grant's development partners had paused 2 projects, citing governance concerns, another elegant phrase for nobody trusts you near money. Paul began the mediation. With a settlement proposal, Grant would issue a written clarification stating that the Bright Harbor pledge had not been authorized by the Hart Family Trust. He would reimburse legal fees tied to the emergency trust filing. He would indemnify the trust from vendor claims connected to his representations. He would agree that no Hart assets were marital property. He would accept the divorce terms in our prenup. He would not admit intentional wrongdoing. Margaret looked at me. This was the part where people expected emotion, fury, refusal, a need to make him say every word exactly. I wanted admission. I wanted the clean moral sentence. I wanted Grant to say, "I knew it was yours and I took it anyway, but I had learned something from my grandfather's documents. Protection did not always sound like confession. Sometimes it sounded like separation." "What about the house?" I asked. Paul glanced at Grant. Grant stared at the table. "He will buy out your share," Paul said. "No." Grant looked up. "I want it sold," I said. His face tightened. "Evelyn, the house gets sold. The proceeds are divided according to the deed and documented contributions. I will not have my name attached to a Mercer property." Paul wrote something down. "That may take time." "I have time." Grant's eyes met mine for a moment. I saw the kitchen we had planned, the library shelves, the garden lights, the bedroom where I had once waited for him to come home from late meetings. "A house can hold memories without deserving protection," Grant spoke quietly. "You loved that house. I loved who I tried to be in it." He looked down. Paul cleared his throat. "We can discuss sale terms," Margaret added, "and a non-disparagement clause with specific exceptions for legal testimony, regulatory inquiries, donor questions, and correction of public misstatements." Paul grimaced. "That is broad. Your client's behavior was broad," Grant said. "I will not be gagged while she ruins me." I looked at him. "I do not need to ruin you, Grant. I need you to stop using my name." His mouth tightened. "Your name is still Mercer." I opened the folder in front of me and removed 1-page petition. "For restoration of former name Evelyn Arthur Hart." My grandfather's middle name sat between mine and his surname. I had chosen it that morning in Margaret's office, not because I needed another inheritance, because I wanted my name to carry memory, not marriage. Grant stared at the page. Something in him broke quietly. "You are taking Hart back?" "Yes." "And Arthur?" "Yes." His eyes shone. "You are erasing me." "No," I said, "I am correcting the label." He laughed once, bitterly. "That sounds like him." "Good." Paul leaned toward him. Grant ignored him. "Did you ever love me?" The room changed. Margaret looked at me, ready to interrupt if I wanted. I did not. "Yes," I said. Grant closed his eyes. "I loved you enough to mistake your ambition for purpose. I loved you enough to call your neglect stress. I loved you enough to let your family spend me and call it unity. I loved you enough to doubt my own discomfort before I doubted your intentions." He opened his eyes. "That is not love," he said. "That is an indictment." "No, it is a receipt." His face twisted. I leaned back. "I am not saying I never loved you. I am saying love was not a legal authorization." The mediator, who had been silent for nearly an hour, looked down at her notes to hide her expression. Grant looked at Paul. "Accept the terms," he said. Paul blinked. "Grant, accept them." That should have felt like victory. It felt like a door clicking shut. The final agreement took another 4 hours. Every clause mattered. The trust claim would settle with reimbursement, indemnity, written correction, and cooperation in related inquiries. The divorce would proceed under the prenup. The house would be listed within 60 days. Grant would have no access to my trust, accounts, donor identity, personal documents, or professional contacts. He would issue a statement clarifying that any prior implication of my approval was inaccurate. He fought hardest over the statement, not the money, the words. In the end, the statement read, "I acknowledge that the Bright Harbor Foundation pledge announced in connection with the Mercer family was not authorized by Evelyn Hart or the Hart Family Trust. I regret my role in representing otherwise and apologize for the harm caused." It did not say fraud, it did not say theft, But it said enough to remove my name from his lie. When we left the mediation room, Grant followed me into the hallway. Margaret and Paul both noticed. Margaret stopped near the elevator. Grant kept a careful distance. Evelyn, I turned. He looked exhausted, not elegantly, truly. His hair was mussed, his tie loose, the ring still on his finger. I thought if I could fix the pledge, I could fix us, he said. I shook my head. You thought the damage was the exposure. His eyes reddened. What was it then? I looked at the man I had married and finally saw him without the need to interpret him kindly. The damage was that you knew I would be hurt and planned around my silence. He swallowed. I am sorry. This time, the words were plain. No timing, no confusion, no emotional strain, just sorry. It reached me. It did not change me. I believe you, I said. Hope flickered in his face. I ended it before it could grow. And I am still leaving. The hope vanished. He nodded once, as if a physical blow had landed and he had decided not to show it. Will you ever speak to me again? Through counsel until the divorce is final. After, I thought about that. No, he looked away. It was not dramatic. No shouting, no collapse, just a man hearing the consequence he had earned. I stepped into the elevator with Margaret as the doors closed. Grant remained in the hallway, one hand in his pocket, the other touching the ring he still had not removed. Margaret said nothing on the ride down. Outside, late afternoon light turned the courthouse windows gold. Lydia waited at the curb with 2 coffees and the expression of someone ready to fight traffic or patriarchy, whichever appeared first. Well, she asked. I got my name back. She handed me a coffee. Then we need cake. I also sold the house. Then we need expensive cake. I laughed. It startled me, not because I had forgotten how, but because my laugh sounded like it belonged to someone who had made space inside herself. The months that followed were not cinematic. They were better than cinematic. I signed documents. I answered questions. I met with forensic accountants. I chose what furniture to keep and what to let the estate sale company handle. I walked through the Mercer house one last time on a Saturday morning while movers wrapped paintings and carried boxes out the front door. The white roses were gone. The wedding photo still sat face down on the console table. I picked it up for a moment. I studied the woman in the picture, younger, hopeful. Grandfather's hand on her shoulder, Grant's smile beside her. I did not hate her. That surprised me. For weeks, I had thought I would look at my former self and feel shame. Instead I felt tenderness. She had not been stupid. She had been trusting. Trust was not a crime. Exploiting it was. I removed the photo from the frame and tore it once down the middle. Not in rage, in accuracy. Grant went one way. I went another. I kept the half with my grandfather. The house sold in spring to a family with 2 little boys who ran through the empty rooms while their parents apologized. I told them not to. A house deserved noise from people who wanted to live in it, not perform inside it. Bright Harbor survived, barely. The board removed Celeste after the review. They issued their own statement about financial controls, donor transparency, and leadership failure. Nora became interim operations director for 6 months, then left for a smaller nonprofit with cleaner books. Before she left, she sent me a note. I thought telling the truth would end my career. It gave me one I can live with. Celeste disappeared from the charity pages for a while. Then she tried to relaunch herself as a consultant in impact storytelling. Lydia sent me the website with 7 skull emojis. I did not click. Diane sent one letter, not an apology. Diane did not believe in giving other people weapons. It said Grant had been under pressure. Celeste had manipulated his better nature. And I should remember marriage vows were not designed for easy days. I returned it through counsel. Unopened, Grant complied with the settlement. Not gracefully, according to Margaret, but he complied. His investors withdrew from one development project and demanded oversight on another. The Mercer family accountant retired early. Diane stepped down from 2 committees to focus on family. The phrase appeared in a society newsletter beside a photo where her smile looked painful. The divorce became final on a rainy Tuesday. I wore a blue coat and signed my name carefully, Evelyn Arthur Hart. The letters looked like a room with open windows. After court, I did not go to lunch with a handsome new man. I did not kiss anyone in the rain. I did not make a speech on the courthouse steps. I went to my grandfather's old studio. It sat above a row of shops in a neighborhood Grant had once called transitional, which meant not useful to him yet. Dust gathered on the windowsills. The sink was stained with old pigment. Shelves lined the walls, still holding labeled jars, brushes, cotton gloves, and notebooks filled with grandfather's precise handwriting. I had avoided the studio after he died because grief had made it feel occupied. Now it felt waiting. I opened every window. City air moved through the room, carrying the smell of rain, bread from the bakery downstairs, and wet pavement. On the center work table sat a covered canvas. I lifted the cloth. It was a small painting of a girl standing in a doorway, light behind her, one hand raised as if deciding whether to enter or leave. The varnish had yellowed. A corner was damaged. Grandfather had written a note on the back, "Not ruined. Needs patience." I laughed softly, then I cried, not for Grant, not for Celeste, not for Diane, the house. The headlines, or the woman I had been under the chandelier waiting to be told when to smile. I cried because my grandfather had left me more than money. He had left instructions, protection, memory, a way back to myself. 2 months later, the Heart Restoration Fund opened with a small board, transparent books, and a first-year program supporting art therapy rooms in public schools and conservation training for young restorers without family money. Not a wing, not a gala fantasy, real rooms, real invoices, real children holding brushes without becoming props in someone else's love story. At the opening, there was no chandelier. We held it in the studio. People stood close together with paper cups of coffee and folding chairs. Nora came. Lydia cried and denied it. James made a dry little toast that would have made grandfather grin. Margaret stood near the door, watching everything like a woman prepared to sue the universe if necessary. A reporter from the arts section asked why I chose restoration. I looked at the damaged painting on the wall, the girl in the doorway now cleaned of yellowed varnish, her raised hand visible again. Because restoration is not pretending damage never happened, I said, it is removing what does not belong until the original surface can breathe. That quote ran in the paper the next day. Grant must have read it because he sent one final email through counsel. "I am glad you built something real. Arthur would be proud." I did not answer. Some messages do not require a reply. Some doors stay closed not because of bitterness, but because peace needs architecture too. That evening, after everyone left the studio, I stayed alone. The city darkened outside the windows. Lights came on in apartments across the street. Somewhere below, the bakery owner laughed with a customer. Ordinary life moved without asking permission from my past. I unlocked the old wooden drawer in grandfather's work table and placed my wedding ring inside, not as a shrine, not as evidence anymore, as an object that had lost its authority. Beside it, I placed a copy of the first gala program, the one that listed my inheritance as a Mercer gift, then the lawsuit cover page, then the court order restoring my name, a small archive of the woman who had learned the difference between being generous and being used. I closed the drawer. My phone buzzed. "Lydia, dinner. You are not allowed to become a mysterious attic artist." I smiled and typed back, "Only if there is cake, always cake." I turned off the studio lights, locked the door, and walked downstairs into the cool night. No one waited to escort me, no one waited to approve me, no one waited to spend me. For the first time in years, every step I took belonged entirely to me.